Lanterns glowed against the historic architecture, casting long shadows over the massive crowd gathered in the city square. Voices merged into a single rhythmic countdown, the people oblivious to the true nature of their impending fate. A young man suddenly emerged from behind the stone pillars, his silhouette wreathed in a flickering, unnatural blue energy. Anxiety clouded his features as he scanned the surroundings, his eyes widening with the realization that his plans had crumbled. He recognized the familiar geometry of the square, a place that had served as the theater for his past nightmares. This return marked the exact moment he was first pulled into the lethal game that had consumed his previous lifetimes. Despite reaching the 12th and final round in his last attempt, the cruel forces of reality had dragged him back to the very start. Memories of the time reversal rune pulsed in his mind, reminding him that this was his final chance to change the outcome. The blue-eyed traveler understood that the only path to survival required navigating the game without a single margin for error. The mission demanded the recruitment of 4 specific companions before the final round, a constraint that weighed heavily on his shoulders. He scanned the sea of faces, searching for the lone, sullen figure of a boy he needed to secure as an ally. Nearby, a group of students chattered about graduation, their voices dripping with the naive optimism of youth. A bald teenager turned toward the loner, mockingly questioning the boy about his supposed dreams of becoming a gangster. The surrounding peers erupted in laughter, calling the loner a madman whose ambition could easily cost him his life. The rebel shrugged off the insults, declaring his indifference to danger and his desire to live by his own singular code. The bullies sneered at the defiance, promising that the victim would remain their plaything long after graduation day ended. The stranger with the blue aura watched the exchange, his gaze fixed on the intimidated boy known as Aaron. A terrifying cold pressure radiated from the observer, causing the nearby bullies to freeze in inexplicable sudden unease. As the final countdown hit 0, the mysterious youth pulled back his hood and locked eyes with the gathered crowd. The bully felt a shift in the atmosphere, noting the predatory transformation in the observer's cold, calculated stare. The aggressor rebuked his victim for the boldness of his gaze, though he reluctantly allowed the boy to live in honor of the celebration. Suddenly, a booming, mocking voice shattered the festive mood, declaring the ignorance of the humans beneath them. It felt as though a celestial being had descended, a creature that looked upon the crowd with the contempt of a zookeeper watching monkeys. The observers assumed it was a high-tech performance, yet the blue-eyed traveler knew the sickening reality of the arrival. The angel-like entity insulted the gathering, calling humanity a collection of trashy, insignificant creatures. Those present shouted in indignation, demanding the masked stranger explain his presence in his bizarre, carnival-like attire. The ethereal being grew bored of the noise, its eyes flashing a sudden, ominous shade of crimson. Without warning, the head of the defiant bully exploded, spraying blood across the panicked, screaming onlookers. Horror gripped the square as the crowd scattered, the reality of the inhuman threat finally setting in. The deity sneered at the carnage, asking how a lowly human dared to speak to a supreme being with such familiarity. A mandate was issued. The divine messenger announced that a game would commence on the 1st of every month, spanning 20 rounds in another dimension. Survival was presented as a simple matter of completing quests, with the promise of rewards for those who succeeded. Whispers of fear rippled through the survivors, their minds struggling to grasp the possibility of returning to their reality. The goddess clarified that survival was not guaranteed, noting that only half of the contestants would live to see the end. Disbelief clouded the faces of the people, but the veteran players simply sighed, exhausted by the repetition of the rules. An additional rule materialized: only individuals aged 15 to 29 from across the globe were eligible for the game. The elderly visitors felt a wave of relief, their age granting them an unexpected reprieve from the deadly competition. The youth lashed out in anger, resenting the older generation's sudden indifference to the plight of the younger ones. A precise number was declared: 1,801,029,290 participants. The briefing concluded, and the participants were whisked away to a void where they were temporarily separated from one another. The voice instructed them to craft personal avatars, warning that this was the only chance for customization. The veteran decided to follow his proven strategy, selecting the name Black Braid for his virtual identity. His body ignited in invisible flames, signaling the start of the transformation as he reclaimed his familiar, battle-hardened form. The other participants materialized in the central hub, many of them clumsily experimenting with their new appearances. Some attempted to mimic celebrities, but Black Braid watched with disdain, knowing that beauty was a liability in this world. He spotted Huang Yongmin, who had prioritized a muscular physique, showing a slight improvement in his tactical awareness. The divine entity reappeared, gloating over the fear-stricken faces of the mortals who now filled the square. Confusion grew as the participants realized the number of people present did not match the billions promised by the angel. The creature scoffed at their limited perspective, explaining that they were scattered across multiple dimensions, each with its own host. A status window shimmered into existence before every player, displaying their name, alias rank, and level. The veteran read the familiar text, his heart hardening as he prepared to begin the cycle of death once again. The celestial figure gestured toward the shimmering status windows, mocking the mortals for their obvious ignorance of the game's deeper mechanics. The entity declared the primary objective of the trials, tasking the participants with growing stronger to survive until the 20th round. A promise of wish fulfillment dangled in the air, offering the ultimate reward to any soul capable of completing the entire gauntlet. The crowd erupted into a chaotic murmur, their fear briefly eclipsed by the intoxicating dream of having their deepest desires granted by a god. The deity directed their attention to their inventory, revealing that a special starter gift had been granted to every individual present. Each participant scrambled to manifest their digital interface, eager to discover what item the higher powers had bestowed upon them. The valley filled with gasps of confusion as the players discovered fragments of random runes and mysterious artifacts of unknown utility. The divine messenger explained that these rune fragments were one-time use items, serving as the only advantage for a level 1 novice. Huang Yanming wasted no time, activating his rune and feeling a surge of raw, crackling energy pulse through his trembling hand. Noticing the frustration etched onto the faces of those who received inferior gifts, the goddess offered a cruel, mocking smile. She reminded the mortals that the distribution of power was governed entirely by chance, leaving no room for complaints against the system. With the binding process complete, the celestial being snapped its fingers, signaling the commencement of the first act of the death show. A massive, blood-red-eyed goblin materialized in the center of the peaceful clearing, its presence radiating a sickening aura of malice. The newcomers identified the creature as a goblin, their minds struggling to reconcile this nightmare with the logic of virtual reality games. They clung to the desperate hope that this was merely a high-tech simulation, refusing to accept the lethal reality of their situation. The angelic entity shattered their delusions, warning that the single creature was merely the vanguard of a massive, summoned army. Participants watched in paralyzed horror as thousands of bloodthirsty monsters tore through the fabric of space to fill the valley. The messenger announced the brutal balance of power, pitting 10,000 terrified humans against 50,000 savage goblins. A wild, guttural roar echoed across the clearing as the goblin horde charged, eager to taste the blood of their prey. Panic seized the crowd, leaving the inexperienced players frozen in indecision as the wall of teeth and claws rushed toward them. Black Braid, relying on the cold wisdom gained from 99 previous lifetimes, stepped forward to meet the incoming tide of monsters. The surrounding players stared in bewilderment, unable to understand why this stranger would willingly walk into the jaws of death. Ignoring the frantic warnings of his peers, the veteran felt only a calm, absolute certainty in his own lethal capabilities. He delivered a bone-crushing kick to the lead goblin, sending the creature flying backward with a display of overwhelming practice strength. The seasoned warrior knew that his survival depended on establishing dominance early, forcing the other survivors to view him as a leader. His precise strike toppled the monster, forcing it to drop its crude weapon as it collapsed into the dirt in a heap of broken limbs. Black Scythe intended to use this slaughter as a performance, aiming to terrify the weaker players into following his lead. He snatched the fallen blade from the ground, spinning with lethal grace to carve through several approaching goblins in a single fluid arc. The onlookers marveled at his efficiency, whispering theories about his potential military background and his cold, tactical demeanor. Emboldened by his success, some of the novices attempted to mirror his actions, though their lack of skill made their efforts clumsy and frantic. One careless newcomer was quickly overwhelmed, his confidence shattered as a goblin's sharp claws sank deep into his unprotected flesh. The illusion of a game vanished instantly, replaced by the visceral, suffocating terror of a fight for survival. Panicked cries for help filled the air as the survivors scattered, instinctively turning to the only figure who seemed capable of killing. Blackbraid continued his methodical carnage, his eyes hard and unblinking as he waded through the encroaching waves of gore. He realized that the realization of death had finally taken root in the minds of the others, forcing them to prioritize their own survival. Memories of his very first rebirth flickered through his mind, reminding him that he had once shared the same pathetic, trembling fear. He understood now that fleeing was a futile gesture, as a girl who attempted to escape slammed into an invisible barrier surrounding the arena. Modern humans, unaccustomed to violence, struggled to overcome the moral paralysis required to take the life of a living, breathing creature. The cruel law of the arena offered no middle ground, forcing every participant to choose between becoming a killer or a corpse. One goblin narrowly escaped the grasp of a struggling novice, displaying a level of bestial agility that caught the humans off guard. The battlefield became a gruesome tableau of death, with bodies piling up while the remaining survivors fought with desperate, clawing intensity. The divine observer watched the slaughter with detached amusement, finding the unequal struggle between humans and monsters highly entertaining. Her gaze suddenly sharpened, locking onto the warrior known as Black Scythe, who moved through the chaos with terrifying, calculated precision. She accessed his data, noting with surprise that he had already single-handedly destroyed 70 goblins in a matter of minutes. The system's limitations frustrated the goddess, as she found her ability to view the full details of this mysterious player mysteriously restricted. Despite her disdain for humanity, she could not help but feel a flicker of genuine respect for the mortal's masterful combat performance. As he dispatched another wave of enemies, a series of notifications flashed before the hero, granting him experience, gold, and a level increase. He sensed movement behind him and whirled around, spotting a fresh wave of goblins rushing to avenge their fallen kin. Invisible blades of energy erupted from his hands, piercing through the backs of the monsters as if he were wielding a phantom weapon. The veteran realized that his recent level up had unlocked new, devastating powers, allowing him to dominate the battlefield with ease. He decimated the remaining goblins, his movements becoming a blur of efficiency that left the spectators in a state of stunned awe. The final surviving monster hesitated, its primitive mind realizing the hopelessness of attacking an opponent who moved like a force of nature. Black Scythe gave the creature no quarter, lunging forward to drive his dagger into its chest with cold, uncompromising finality. He stood amidst the carnage and loudly demanded to know if there were any more challengers left to face him. The remaining goblins trembled and froze, their instinct for self-preservation finally overriding their bloodlust as they faced the Reaper. Seeing the temporary cessation of the assault, the veteran opened his status window to allocate his hard-earned points into dexterity. He understood that agility was the key to both evasion and offensive speed, making it the most vital stat for his survival strategy. With a cold, mocking grin, he approached a cowering goblin and questioned why it was standing still instead of attacking him. The creatures remained paralyzed, unable to process the existence of a human who treated their lethal horde like a minor inconvenience. He didn't wait for a reply, vanishing in a flash of speed to reappear behind the group and cut them down in a single stroke. The quest window shimmered, confirming the completion of the trial and granting him yet another level for his decisive victory. He knew that this performance had successfully captured the angel's attention, but his sights were set on the highest possible ranking. The top 3 participants would receive special rewards, and he intended to secure the first-place prize for the entire region. He reached into his inventory, preparing to use the rare weapon ticket he had earned to further bolster his arsenal for the rounds ahead. The practical warrior accepted his new dagger, discarding the primitive goblin weapon in favor of the superior steel. He secured the reward chest, recognizing the immense value of leading the regional rankings as he finalized his inventory. The veteran scanned the battlefield, watching as the remaining participants continued their desperate struggle for survival against the encroaching monsters. A strange realization dawned on him as he noted a specific type of goblin that had never appeared in any of his previous 99 rebirths. He activated the random rune fragment he had earned, curious to see what secret power the mysterious artifact contained. The adventurer gasped as he received the legendary rune of time reversal, the most coveted treasure in the entire world. The powerful artifact immediately began to merge with his essence, attempting to engrave itself directly onto his physical form. The physical engraving failed as expected, yet the remnants of the magical rune successfully integrated into the player's soul. Black Scythe realized that if he could ever find a way to re-engrave the rune, he would gain the ability to manipulate time itself. An unexpected bonus notification appeared, granting him the rare title of the Last Time Traveler, and leaving the seasoned veteran in a state of shock. He understood that this title surpassed even the highest tier runes in rarity, rivaling the power of exclusive priest-only resurrection skills. Unlike standard resurrection, which only recovered 30% of a player's health, this unique ability promised full regeneration upon revival. The fighter marveled at the incredible utility of this gift, which far exceeded his expectations and previous game experiences. With his new trump card secured, he turned his attention back to the battlefield to check the status of the bully, Yenming. He spotted the self-proclaimed gangster amidst the thick of the fray, noting that the feisty youth possessed surprising stamina. The observer surmised that the young man would likely survive the first test, despite the growing intensity of the combat. The watching angel began to feel bored, noting that the battle's ferocity was gradually decreasing as the humans grew weary. The Supreme Being pondered the inherent weakness of the human participants, blaming its own poor planning for the lack of a slaughter. The bored deity posed a rhetorical question to the air and decided it was time to introduce a new form of entertainment. One of the fighting girls overheard the angel's ominous words and realized with horror that even more terrible trials awaited them. She watched in disbelief as the wounded man in her arms began to mysteriously vanish into thin air. Other survivors noticed the strange disappearance of the corpses, sparking a wave of anxiety and whispered questions across the valley. A brilliant, blinding glow suddenly enveloped the entire area, signaling the materialization of a massive new wave of goblins. These maddened creatures rushed to attack the exhausted players, their only purpose being to spill human blood. The panicked participants found themselves trapped in a desperate situation, having no clear path to escape the incoming slaughter. The Supreme Being announced the summoning of 50,000 additional goblins, mockingly congratulating itself on the sadistic gift. The players realized the hopelessness of their plight and chose to continue their struggle, knowing it was their only path to survival. Some participants still attempted to avoid the fighting, failing to realize that cowardice was a death sentence in these deadly circumstances. Hang Unmen, thinking only of his own life, heartlessly used a weaker companion as a human shield against the onslaught. The digital counter of destroyed monsters ticked upward toward 2,000, reflecting the desperate and doomed resistance of the survivors. Black Scythe rested quietly off to the side, having finished his portion of the task and watching the carnage from the sidelines. The veteran remained a mere spectator, exerting no influence over the chaos unfolding before his eyes. The Supreme Being watched with a genuine, twisted smile, savoring every moment of the bloody mess it had orchestrated. Blackbraid analyzed the angel's emotions, seeking to uncover the true dark motives behind the deity's cruel game. The last of the extra goblins fell, finally completing the unforeseen ordeal forced upon the participants by the capricious deity. The survivors watched in disbelief as the remaining monsters suddenly dissolved into nothingness. The angel announced with cold detachment that only half of the participants had successfully completed the quest. The failures were sentenced to death without the right of appeal, their previous efforts deemed insufficient by the game's rules. The shocked losers begged for one more chance, pleading for the opportunity to kill at least one monster to save themselves. They realized too late that they were facing a ruthless entity completely alien to the concepts of mercy or pity. The soulless angel mockingly inquired about their despondency, urging the survivors to find joy in their continued mortal journey. The deity congratulated the remaining players on passing the first test and expressed a sarcastic hope for better efforts in the next round. The board displayed the final results, confirming that Black Scythe had taken first place across all regions. For this outstanding performance, the winner received 1,000 gold, a currency reserved for a store feature that unlocked at level 10. The other participants stared in envy and admiration, unable to fathom how one man could display such absolute superiority. The triumphant player felt only amusement at their reactions, knowing his status was now undeniable to every person present. Even the angel expressed genuine surprise that the #1 ranking in the entire game world had been claimed by a participant from its region. Intrigued, the Supreme Being decided to test its luck by asking the mysterious winner a direct question about the source of his strength. The angel suspected the use of a special rune, but its emotional state suddenly shifted, betraying a sense of underlying anxiety. The astute player inquired about the angel's inability to view his information, subtly hinting that the deity's data access was restricted. The Supreme Being hastily assured the mortal of its own omnipotence, clumsily attempting to mask its confusion and frustration. Black Scythe grinned inwardly, realizing he had successfully exposed the divine deceiver and confirmed his deepest suspicions. The warrior made a bold request to the angel, drawing the undivided attention of every survivor in the valley. The astonished deity could barely conceal its amazement at the audacity of a mortal who dared to demand anything from a supreme being. The winner bluntly complained about the meager first-place reward, shocking everyone present with his incredible lack of fear. Hang Min froze in place, terrified by the sheer audacity of a man who dared to defy a god after a deadly trial. The enraged goddess blazed with silent fury, unable to believe that a mortal would challenge her authority. Blackbraid nonchalantly clarified his expectations, insisting that he deserved a reward commensurate with his massive contribution to the game. The stunned divine creature asked the man to repeat his demand, wanting to ensure it had heard the mortal correctly. The warrior stood his ground and insisted on an improved reward, refusing to accept the system's initial offering. The survivors shifted their gazes between the reckless brave and the seething angel, expecting the hero to be vaporized instantly. The Supreme Being contemplated blowing the mortal's head off, but remembered the recent expenditure of its disposable ability. A mysterious idea visited the angel, causing it to pause and ponder a new, alternative punishment for the arrogant man. The deity asked if the man truly wanted a better reward, warning that such insolence was usually punishable by death. The angel ordered a private conversation, commanding the other participants to remain where they were and await their return. The witnesses began to whisper in shock, debating the meaning of these successful negotiations with a divine entity. Before departing, Black Scythe turned his head and cast a piercing, chilling glance directly at Hang Min. The bully realized with alarm that the look was a specific warning, foreshadowing a future confrontation between them. Black Scythe turned his back on the crowd, swiftly following the goddess into the dense trees of the surrounding forest. The silhouettes of the mortal warrior and the divine being vanished into the shadows, hidden away from the prying eyes of the survivors. The impatient angel demanded that the man move closer, expressing irritation at the need to constantly look back. The deity reminded the defiant mortal of his place, ordering him to obey the commands of the Supreme Being without reservation. The arrogant creature stated that the system-assigned rewards could not be changed, planning to teach the ungrateful man a lesson in humility. The deity harbored a secret intent to execute the insolent mortal the moment they stepped behind the jagged rocks. The Supreme Being feared the potential fallout of murdering a player without the cover of a disposable ability. Choosing caution, the deceitful entity lured the victim into a secluded patch of forest, away from all witnesses. The angel sneered, silently judging the man for his foolish decision to challenge a creature of divine standing. The celestial being asked the mortal to clarify his desired reward, preparing a lethal trick instead of a prize. Before the deity could finish speaking, the angel spotted a fist hurtling through the air toward its own face. The daredevil struck the celestial creature with shocking force, connecting perfectly with its delicate porcelain cheek. Stunned by the audacity of the blow, the angel tumbled backward several meters through the thick undergrowth. The Supreme Being collapsed to the dirt in a state of utter humiliation, unable to process the sacrilege of a human touch. Fury ignited within the deity's mind, and the creature vowed to eradicate the defiant man regardless of the consequences. The angel spun around to deliver a killing strike, only to discover that the warrior had completely vanished. Before the creature could process the disappearance, the man materialized behind her back with terrifying, unnatural speed. Black Scythe gripped the angel's feathered garment, trapping the divine being in a vice-like hold. Panic flooded the creature's eyes as she realized her own arrogance had lured her into a fatal, unforeseen trap. The angel screamed for mercy, begging the warrior to stop his assault, but the pleas fell on deaf ears. The ruthless fighter ignored the wailing, his expression remaining entirely nonchalant as he prepared for his next move. Piercing cries erupted from the angel's throat as the warrior began to methodically tear the sacred wings from her back. The fighter coldly ordered the creature to cease her pathetic whimpering while he continued to inflict excruciating, intolerable pain. He snapped the delicate appendages with ease, systematically denying the victim any hope of a quick escape. The triumphant victor leaned close, asking the suffering angel with sadistic curiosity how much agony she currently endured. The warrior recalled how the same creature had mocked his own life just moments before, fueling his cold resolve. The angel shrieked in absolute madness, failing to comprehend how a mere mortal could treat a deity with such brutality. Black Scythe accused the victim of hiding a lethal dagger within her wings, exposing her plan to assassinate him. The stunned angel gasped in horror, realizing the mortal had seen through her devious, hidden strategy. Her attempts to justify the action failed to move the fighter, who sneered at the obviousness of her lies. The warrior abruptly addressed the creature by her true name, calling her Burial with a voice of stone. The angel froze in catatonic shock, terrified that a common human possessed knowledge of her true celestial identity. The enigmatic man refused to explain his source, stating that such details were irrelevant to a dying pawn. Burial waved a hand, threatening the warrior with instant death, yet her voice trembled with newfound vulnerability. Black Scythe laughed at the empty threat, calmly explaining that her current helplessness rendered such warnings entirely meaningless. The reality of her hopeless situation finally dawned on the Supreme Being, stripping away her divine pretenses. The stubborn angel attempted to threaten vengeance through her heavenly companions, but the warrior remained completely unfazed. He declared the torture sufficient and announced his intention to finally dispose of the divine entity. Burial warned the man that killing her would make it impossible for him to ever return home safely. The unperturbed fighter refuted her claim with a smirk, leaving the angel to marvel at the depth of his secret knowledge. The desperate victim offered the warrior any information he desired in exchange for her freedom. Black Scythe rejected the offer with utter scorn, dismissing the angelic habitat as nothing more than a pawn's playground. While the stunned creature pondered the source of his power, the assassin drove a dagger into her chest. Caught entirely off guard, the angel felt her life force drain away as the cold steel pierced her essence. The divine creature collapsed to the forest floor, knowing she would never rise again after such a precise blow. A system notification flashed in the air, confirming the first angel kill in the history of the game. The warrior received the unique title of First Angel Killer, along with the rare prize of Celestial Blood. The golden rune automatically fused with his body, surging through his veins to enhance his already formidable strength. He understood the true value of these rewards, having witnessed their power during his 13th attempt at revenge. The veteran knew that the angels would be horrified to discover he had obtained the rune that granted him an edge. He viewed the angel's blood as a priceless ingredient, essential for evolving his character class to a higher tier. An experienced player understood that reaching level 10 allowed for the selection of one of 3 specialized development classes. While most participants hunted for standard items, the warrior sought the unique classes available only through impossible feats. The gap between a regular class and a unique one was immense, offering bonus runes and secret skill branches. Black Scythe focused on his next goal, determined to reach level 9 as quickly as possible to secure his evolution. He discarded all half measures, ready to push forward at any cost to survive the finality of this timeline. The determined warrior vowed to grow stronger, knowing the stakes of the game were absolute. Hung and Min suddenly awakened in the real world. jolted from a nightmare of the deadly high-stakes competition. The confused young man stared at the town square, struggling to distinguish reality from the vivid, terrifying vision. Other players returned to consciousness at the same time, their faces pale with shock and lingering trauma. Hang Eun-min questioned the nature of the phenomenon, searching for a logical explanation that refused to manifest. He realized with horror that the time passed in the nightmare matched the duration of the real-world blackout. Awakened participants complained of stiff muscles and splitting headaches, as if they had endured physical combat. A comrade asked about the mass fainting spell, but the group found no rational reason for the synchronization. The group noticed a young man named Kim Daeshik still lying motionless on the stone pavement. They shouted his name and shook his shoulders, but the pale boy remained unresponsive to their desperate pleas. The grim truth settled over the square as the group realized the boy was not merely sleeping. Shocked eyewitnesses touched his skin and found it chillingly cold, devoid of any sign of life. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Their comrade had died in the game, and his body was now a corpse. The angel's ominous prophecy proved to be the absolute truth, confirming that death in the game meant death in reality. The square transformed into a scene of utter tragedy as families sobbed over the lifeless bodies of their loved ones. Hang Eun-min stared at the carnage, his mind fracturing as he realized the game had destroyed all concepts of justice. The survivors in the town square scrambled to console a friend who had descended into a state of hysterical panic. They urged the frantic man to focus on the immediate task of survival, despite the clear resentment he felt toward the game's arbitrary rules. The group reminded their companions that the situation affected everyone equally, internally judging the man for his selfish display during such a critical moment. Cynical onlookers turned their attention toward Yenming, noting that his past as a local bully meant he truly had very little to lose in this new reality. The former tormentor looked troubled, and when his friends inquired about the object of his fixation, he admitted he was searching for a specific boy he had victimized. Yenming tried to recall the kid's exact location from before the blackout, but he found the spot completely empty and devoid of any trace of the target. The cocky bully assumed the weakling had perished during the first round of the game, feeling absolutely no regret for the boy's potential demise. Suddenly, a mysterious figure caught Yenming's eye, standing out among the ordinary, terrified crowd with his unusual and imposing presence. The intrigued observer struggled to identify the man, who appeared vastly different from the other surviving participants gathered in the square. The stranger's astonishing, high-quality armor raised a flurry of questions for Yenming, who had never encountered such advanced equipment in his normal life. Nervous speculation that this man might be a winner from past games caused the bully's heart to hammer against his ribs with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Deciding to test a desperate hunch, Yenming attempted to summon his status window, and he gasped when the interface loaded clearly into the real world. Shocked by this confirmation of his status as an active player, the young man struggled to process the total blurring of lines between virtuality and reality. Participants around them followed suit, and soon discovered that their own status windows were fully accessible in the physical world. The group realized with growing dread that the change was irreversible, though they discovered they could only view their own statistics, not those of the people standing beside them. Intrigued by these newfound possibilities, the man named Hung tested his physical limits by picking up a heavy stone from the ground. To the collective amazement of the observers, he easily crushed the hard rock into dust, demonstrating the incredible strength he had gained during the deadly trial. Stunned by the power he now possessed, Yenming could hardly believe the reality of his own transformation. The realization of the prospects opened by this superhuman strength sent a wave of dangerous, joyous excitement through the ambitious young man. Meanwhile, news channels broadcasted reports of an unprecedented incident involving the simultaneous loss of consciousness of 10,000 citizens during the New Year's Eve celebration. Broadcasts mentioned a mysterious woman in an angel costume who had descended from the sky during the mass gathering. Reports stated that the woman addressed the citizens before dying in a sudden blast, after which she pointed her finger at the crowd and uttered unknown, haunting words. Eyewitnesses described how the stranger extended her hands in a gesture of strange blessing before the mass fainting spell took hold of everyone in the square. Law enforcement authorities confirmed that most victims fell within the age range of 15 to 29, with similar cases emerging across the globe. Black Scythe watched the news with grim satisfaction, recognizing the beginning of the predicted events and knowing this was only the first phase of the coming apocalypse. The news confirmed that by 5:20 in the morning, half of the victims had awakened, while the rest remained in comas or were declared brain dead, including a famous celebrity found in the plaza. The veteran player realized the true danger lay much deeper than the surface-level coverage, as the real threat was the permanent transfer of game performance into the physical world. He understood that while the problem seemed insignificant at low levels, the situation would change with terrifying speed. As levels increased, players would turn into superhumans against whom ordinary members of humanity would be completely defenseless. The determined warrior did not plan to stand idly by as the world plunged into chaos, especially given the catastrophic consequences he knew were coming by the 12th round. The only way forward was to take control of other players, which required surpassing everyone else in raw power and influence. The cold-blooded strategist intended to employ various methods of recruitment, drawing on the invaluable experience gained from his 99 previous attempts. He had already identified several promising candidates with high potential and developed a meticulous strategy to bring them into his fold. The wise tactician realized that active intervention was premature at this early stage, so he decided to wait for a more opportune time to execute his plan. Having finished his analysis, the warrior headed home, where more pressing personal matters demanded his immediate attention. Suddenly, the fighter's gaze stopped on something that caused an instant sharp reaction in his normally unflappable demeanor. Noticing the traces of hastily eaten noodles, the landlord mentally noted his neighbor's sloppy eating habits with a flash of mild irritation. Heading resolutely toward one of the rooms, the careful observer opened the door to discover an unexpected scene waiting in the shadows. On the floor of the room, curled into a small ball, slept an exhausted young man who remained entirely unaware of his brother's return. Watching the sleeper, Black Scythe allowed a smile of unexpected warmth to touch his lips, mentally noting his younger brother's peaceful rest. The boy was Ryu Huan, a third-grade middle school student and the only family the warrior had left. The veteran noted that their family had once been quite ordinary, but fate had changed everything following the tragic car accident that claimed their parents. The older brother had assumed official guardianship, a heavy responsibility that had completely reversed the usual life of the siblings. An attentive, protective gaze noticed a strange abrasion on the sleeping boy's arm, which sparked a sudden deep concern in the guardian's heart. As he stared at the injury, the older brother pondered the circumstances that might have caused such a mark on his younger sibling. Morning light filtered into the room, and Ryu Huan struggled to open his sleepy eyes, confused by the early awakening. The older brother signaled the need to get up, ignoring the teenager's obvious fatigue in the early hour. The sleepy boy tried to object, pointing out that it was only 6 in the morning, but the guardian refused to entertain any arguments. Not wanting to waste precious minutes on explanations, the older brother pulled down the blanket to force the boy into action. The serious guardian promised to explain everything on the way, insisting on immediate packing without further questions. Ryu Huan inquired about their destination, skeptically noting his reluctance to face the dawn after such a restless night. The unusual, terrifying seriousness in his brother's tone caused the teen to listen and follow the instructions without further objection. The alarming warning that the world was plunging into chaos made the boy realize the situation was truly critical. Remembering his brother's plans for New Year's Eve, the younger one inquired about what had happened, receiving a promise of a full explanation during their travel. The brothers moved quickly through the empty city streets, heading toward an unknown location before the sun had fully risen. The teenager looked increasingly alarmed, noting the intense focus on his brother's face that he had not seen in a very long time. Black Scythe inquired about the boy's awareness of the current events, though he was already certain of the answer. Ryu Huan confessed his complete ignorance, having spent the night lost in a dream while the world shifted around him. The senior advised checking the news reports on the internet to witness the extent of the global shock for himself. A stunned Ryu Huan interrogated the meaning of the reports, trying to comprehend the news of an angel descending from heaven to harvest souls. The younger brother anxiously clarified if his sibling had been taken to another dimension as well, receiving a startling confirmation about the slaughter of hundreds of goblins. Refusing to believe the impossible, the excited teen expressed deep concern about his brother's safety after such an incredible ordeal. Black Scythe attempted to reassure him, but the boy resolutely refused to stop worrying about the only person left in his life. The emotional teenager emphasized that his brother had become his only support and protector since their parents' tragic death. Ryu Huan recalled his own tears at the funeral and the way his brother had suddenly taken on the weight of the world to keep them together. With sincere admiration, the younger brother spoke of the elder, who had become the strongest and most reliable man in his view. However, the judicious teen noted the clear difference between general fortitude and the ability to physically confront monsters in real combat. The older brother offered an understanding smile, acknowledging that he knew exactly how much his sibling doubted his actual fighting capability. He explained the existence of the special skill system, which rendered physical muscle secondary to the power of the virtual world. A confident Black Scythe stated that all doubts would vanish after a clear demonstration, urging the teen to continue the journey to reach a full understanding. The boy stopped, adamantly refusing to move further without knowing their final destination. He earnestly asked his brother to stop the mysterious game and reveal the true purpose of their sudden, dangerous movement. Putting his hand on his heart with raw desperation, the younger brother insisted on a direct and honest answer. Seeing the teen's unyielding determination, the warrior paused and weighed the necessity of his next words. The name of the school bully, Bantigu, escaped his lips, causing his younger brother to look at him in utter, paralyzed amazement. The strategist had finally revealed their destination, the secret hideout of the chief tormentor from the boy's own class. The older brother began his explanation by noting that he was well aware of the systematic abuse his sibling had suffered at school. An extremely alarmed Ryu Huan asked how his brother could possibly suggest turning to his worst enemy for help in this new world. With disbelief, the boy clarified his brother's awareness of the abuse, to which the warrior bitterly replied with a question about his own past blindness to the suffering. The junior finally realized that the time for hiding had come to an end. The younger brother had kept his suffering a total secret, shielding his sibling from the ugly reality of his school life. Black Scythe felt a heavy, cold weight in his chest, as he realized how little he had truly known about his brother's daily existence. The older man recalled his own past ignorance, having spent his time resting at home while his sibling faced a gauntlet of torment. He vividly remembered the jarring, late-night phone call that shattered the silence of his room with a dark, ominous message. The voice on the other end gave no details, only stern instructions to rush to the hospital to meet his broken younger sibling. Upon his arrival, the guardian discovered that a brutal beating from a classmate had left the boy completely blind. A corrosive, unbearable sense of guilt consumed the older brother for failing to protect the one person he cherished most. He offered a silent mental vow to his sibling, promising that the days of victimization were finally over. Deep inside the dark, concrete bunker of the school bully, the sounds of another victim's agony echoed against the walls. Bantigu, the cruel ringleader, delivered a series of savage kicks to the stomach of a boy writhing in pain on the floor. The bully demanded to know if the victim wished to die, reminding him of the mandatory tribute of 200,000 won. The injured student remained silent, paralyzed by the intensity of the pain and the sheer impossibility of meeting the financial demand. Seeing no response, the frustrated tyrant drew his leg back to unleash another ruthless, bone-crushing strike. The surrounding minions watched the assault with twisted, sadistic smiles, noting that their leader showed no mercy even to his own subordinates. They whispered admiringly about how even older students from neighboring schools trembled at the mention of Bantigu's name. The bully complained to his group that his underlings were useless, as their inability to extort money was delaying the purchase of his new bike. He paced toward a henchman, demanding fresh, creative ideas to extract the necessary funds from their targets. A bald accomplice suddenly snapped his fingers, claiming he had found the perfect solution to their financial woes. He gestured to the others, suggesting they summon the curly-haired boy they often tormented for easy cash. Bantigu's eyes lit up with malicious glee as he realized they could turn the boy's misery into a New Year's gift for themselves. The gang members cheered, eager to shake down the defenseless orphan who lived in a pathetic, box-like structure. They mocked the boy's lack of parents, displaying a complete absence of human empathy as they discussed his miserable living situation. The young thugs laughed about his brother, entirely unaware that the man they were discussing was already approaching their lair. The entire group suddenly froze, their eyes locking onto the doorway as the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Black Scythe stepped through the threshold, his younger brother trailing closely behind him with a look of nervous apprehension. The gang members erupted in laughter at the coincidence, signaling that their target had walked right into their trap. Bantigu mocked the situation while his cohorts shouted insults, calling the newcomer their favorite punching bag. The ringleader barked the younger brother's name with aggressive authority, a Pavlovian trigger for the fear that gripped the boy. Ryu Wan flinched, his body instinctively preparing to apologize as the weight of past trauma took hold of his senses. Bantigu finally noticed the stranger standing beside his victim, his brow furrowing as he tried to assess the man's cold, dangerous expression. The bully demanded to know why the boy had brought a guest, threatening to punish him for interfering with their operations. Black Scythe introduced himself as the older brother, wearing a sharp, predatory smile that signaled a total reversal of power. Bantigu laughed at the threat, ordering his 3 primary henchmen to prepare for a fight while he watched from the sidelines. The older brother remained perfectly still, knowing that his high agility stats rendered the bully's physical movements painfully slow. The trio of thugs mocked the stranger's height, attempting to use their combined bulk to intimidate him into submission. Without a second of hesitation, the warrior lashed out with a lightning-fast fist that connected squarely with the first offender's jaw. The attacker collapsed instantly, leaving the remaining 2 frozen in disbelief that anyone would dare strike back. The second thug rushed forward in a blind rage, hoping to restore the gang's reputation with a clumsy, wide swing. Black Scythe easily sidestepped the attack, delivering a precise, punishing blow to the bully's cheek that sent him flying backward. The assailant crashed hard into the metal stands, his body hitting the floor with a dull, sickening thud. The final henchman screamed in frustration and charged, only to be met with another crushing punch that ended his participation immediately. In a matter of seconds, the entire group of attackers lay defeated, leaving only the ringleader standing in shocked silence. Bantigu remained smug, failing to comprehend that his physical superiority had been rendered obsolete by the New World Order. He mocked the older brother, assuming the man had merely learned a few cheap moves and was now acting as if he were invincible. The bully lectured his opponent on the importance of numbers, completely oblivious to the fact that he was fighting a supernatural entity. Black Scythe calmly warned the ringleader that ignoring the recent global news was a fatal mistake in judgment. Enraged by the cryptic comment, Bantigu swung a massive fist, intending to crush the man who dared to challenge his authority. The older brother dodged the blow with effortless grace, his movements a blur compared to the sluggish speed of the bully. Tigu found himself caught in a one-sided dance, gasping for air as his desperate attempts to land a hit failed repeatedly. His vision began to darken from the extreme physical strain, and he struggled to understand why his opponent felt so untouchable. Riley inquired if the bully had bothered to read the news, hinting that the world had changed in ways he could not grasp. Black Scythe stated that an informed man would have fled, but the arrogant tyrant only doubled down on his aggression. The warrior unleashed a devastating blow, amplified by his game statistics, which landed with the force of a wrecking ball. The ringleader flew across the room, his face contorting in pain as he felt the first true sting of helplessness. Indignant and refusing to accept reality, Bantigu scrambled to his feet to demand respect for his status as a local gang leader. He lunged once more, but his fists found nothing but air as his opponent toyed with him like a helpless child. The bully felt the ground vanish beneath him as another strike landed, and he spat out a single, bloodied tooth into his palm. The realization of his own total humiliation fueled his rage, but his body could no longer keep up with the overwhelming difference in strength. Black Scythe, bored with the repetitive struggle, began to land punch after punch, focusing exclusively on the bully's face. The remaining gang members watched in absolute horror, realizing that their feared leader was being systematically dismantled. Bantigu desperately tried to land a single glancing hit to reclaim his dignity, but his efforts were entirely in vain. With a final explosive surge of force, the older brother sent the massive bully flying across the room like a discarded doll. The victor stood tall, looking down at his broken opponent with a cold, dismissive look that signaled the end of the terror. The ruthless avenger leaned in closer, his eyes cold as he demanded the trembling bully describe the exact nature of his suffering. Blackbraid felt the familiar sting of bitterness, the memory of his brother's tragic death still burning in his mind like an open wound. The determined warrior steeled himself, resolving to dismantle the offender completely to ensure such a nightmare never darkened their doorstep again. A terrified Tu attempted to intervene, his voice shaking as he offered a desperate negotiation to settle the violence before it escalated further. The older brother ignored the plea, his mind already set on a preordained path of retribution that left no room for compromise. His eyes flickered with a haunting, almost manic intensity as he explained that his younger brother was a line that should never have been crossed. Teague stood frozen in a state of absolute shock, his brain struggling to process the terrifying reversal of power unfolding before him. With frightening ease, the experienced fighter twisted the bully's arm, forcing the man to his knees as the joints groaned under the pressure. The ringleader stared in horror as the older brother reached for his other hand, signaling the beginning of a truly merciless lesson. The broken bully shrieked in agony, his bravado dissolving into pathetic sobs as he begged for mercy and claimed to understand his errors. Ignoring the desperate pleas, the avenger continued his cold work, causing the bully's frightened friends to flee the scene in a blind panic. Ryuan covered his eyes, unable to witness the brutal display of justice as his brother systematically crushed the tormentor's spirit. Blackbraid leveled a final warning, promising to bury the bully in the very dirt if he ever dared to approach his brother again. The terrified ringleader nodded frantically, offering every assurance of compliance as he scrambled to escape the terrifying presence of his adversary. Seeking to ensure the lesson was etched into the bully's memory, the avenger grabbed the victim's arm one last time to drive the point home. As the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the two brothers turned their backs on the violence and began the long walk home. A curious Ryuan finally found his voice, asking the older man how he had acquired such unnatural and devastating fighting prowess. The elder brother sighed, chiding the teenager for his lack of awareness regarding the way gaming skills now translated into the physical world. To prove his point, the experienced player reached into the air and manifested a razor-sharp dagger, its blade shimmering with a lethal, otherworldly light. Ryuan gasped as the weapon appeared from the void, his mind reeling at the impossible reality of the feat. He recalled the supernatural speed his brother had displayed against the thugs, realizing now that his sibling possessed a strength far beyond human limits. The older man explained that he held 11 points in agility, a figure that eclipsed even the most elite athletes who topped out at 10. When the teen asked about the potential for further upgrades, the elder gave an evasive answer, masking his true knowledge of the system. Blackbraid knew he was lying, choosing to hide the burden of his many failed returns to the past to protect his brother's innocence. He remembered a previous attempt where he had shared every detail of his journey, a mistake that had led to his brother's kidnapping and death. The protector vowed that he would never allow his sibling to be used as a pawn in the deadly game between powerful players again. Changing the subject to shield his brother from the truth, the guardian suggested they stop at a store to pick up ingredients for breakfast. Inside the market, the observant younger brother noticed the elder heading toward the noodles, yet also moving with a clear, strategic purpose. Blackbraid approached the ATM, inserting his card to drain every cent of his savings to prepare for the challenges ahead. He successfully withdrew 133,001, a sum that made the younger brother's eyes widen with a mixture of awe and confusion. The elder brushed off the teen's questions about the source of the money, insisting that they focus on enjoying a rare, hearty meal together. Ryuan worried about the price of the goods, but the elder insisted on buying high-quality pork belly, encouraging him to leave his days of cheap noodles behind. The teenager's eyes sparkled with genuine delight at the sight of the meat, his hunger revealing just how long he had lived in poverty. The elder promised that within a few days they would be eating at the finest restaurants, though the frugal teen remained skeptical of such extravagance. Back at home, the younger brother savored the meal, his happiness radiating through the small apartment as he tasted the savory pork. Suddenly, Blackbraid stood up from the table, asking his brother to wait for a moment while he stepped away to finish a secret task. He returned shortly, placing a stack of 20 lottery tickets on the table, which immediately caused the teenager's face to drain of color. Ryuan was horrified, convinced that his brother had recklessly gambled away their entire fortune on a desperate, foolish whim. He lamented the loss of their hard-earned money, but the elder remained calm, urging him to trust the secret knowledge he had brought from the future. The teen stared at the tickets in disbelief, noting that every single one of them featured the exact same set of numbers. The older man smiled enigmatically, knowing that the winning combination was already etched into his memory from a previous timeline. They sat together before the television, the tension in the room thick as the lottery drawing began its broadcast. Ryu-wan gripped his seat, mentally mourning the loss of their savings while his brother calmly watched the numbers appear on the screen. The first two numbers matched perfectly, and the teenager's breath caught in his throat as the third and fourth numbers followed suit. When the final bonus number appeared, confirming the incredible win, the younger brother let out a shout of pure, unadulterated joy. He grabbed the ticket, trembling as he begged his brother to pinch him, convinced he must be hallucinating such a miracle. The elder confirmed it was no dream, reminding the boy that he had promised everything would eventually be all right. Ryu-wan clung to the ticket like a sacred relic, his heart racing with the realization that their lives had changed in an instant. The elder reminded him to keep his voice down, not wanting to alert the neighbors to their sudden and massive change in fortune. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that this capital was essential for the coming economic shifts between players. The brothers set off for the bank, the older man feeling a sense of calm that only came from having lived this victory dozens of times before. The bank clerk offered polite congratulations, though he struggled to hide his surprise at seeing such a young, unassuming student claiming a prize of this magnitude. Upon scanning the ticket and checking the address of the store, the clerk's expression shifted to one of profound, dazed shock. He recalled the specific instructions from his superiors regarding the unusually high number of winning tickets originating from that single location. 100 tickets had been purchased at that same shop, all by one individual, defying every statistical law of probability. The employee knew he had no choice but to immediately summon the bank president to handle a situation that was clearly beyond his pay grade. The bank president approached with a deferential bow, his eyes scanning the young man who had just defied every statistical law of the lottery. He introduced himself as Guan-jun, the man in charge, and extended a formal greeting to the mysterious winner known as Ryu-min. Ryu-min offered a polite, modest nod, his composure remaining entirely unshaken despite the presence of the powerful executive. Guan-jun suggested they relocate to a private office, eager to move the conversation away from the prying eyes of the main lobby. They walked toward the specialized department, an area reserved exclusively for the processing of massive, life-changing financial windfalls. A young female employee stood at the threshold, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal a flicker of intense curiosity. She watched the president walk by and wondered if the unassuming student beside him was perhaps a secret heir or a high-profile client. Guan-jun gestured toward Ryu-min, identifying him as a VIP guest who required immediate and discreet assistance with his winnings. The clerk's eyes widened as she connected the VIP status to the rumors of the man who had swept 100 lottery tickets at once. She maintained a veneer of calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs as she invited the pair into a private, comfortable room. The employee offered them refreshments, but Ryu-min declined with a brief, firm shake of his head, clearly uninterested in pleasantries. He expressed his desire to finalize the payout immediately, his tone leaving no room for bureaucratic delays or unnecessary small talk. The clerk explained the standard protocol for validating such a large quantity of winning tickets, requiring a thorough pre-check of the serial numbers. Ryu-min handed over the stack of paper, watching silently as the woman began the tedious process of official authentication. She marveled at the uniformity of the numbers, struggling to comprehend the sheer foresight required to select the exact winning combination so many times. After the final verification, the employee confirmed that Ryu-min inquired about the final sum, already knowing the exact figure that would be deposited into his account. The clerk hesitated, her voice trembling slightly as she announced the astronomical total of 2.5 billion won. Ryu-min mentally subtracted the tax burden, landing on a... With the capital secured, the brothers moved with sudden, decisive speed to secure a new, safer place to reside. The strategist opened a brokerage account that very evening, intent on pouring his funds into a cryptocurrency he knew would skyrocket next month. After they finished relocating, the old Ryuan looked around the vast, clean space, noting that while the apartment was beautiful, the cost of rent seemed dangerously high. The elder brother revealed that he had invested the majority of their winnings, leaving only 1 billion won in their liquid savings. Ryuan felt a cold chill of anxiety, his mind racing to understand why his brother would take such a reckless, impulsive gamble. The strategist remained calm, explaining that his choices were not based on luck, but on a carefully calculated vision of the future. To soothe his brother's nerves, he hinted at his ability to foresee more winning numbers in his dreams, a lie that masked his true supernatural knowledge. Ryuan recalled the strange, perfect memory his brother had displayed earlier, and he accepted the explanation without further suspicion. Ryumin kept his own counsel, knowing that he could never forget the numbers because he had lived through these cycles dozens of times before. The elder brother suggested they grab a meal, but his sudden, abrupt shift in mood left the teenager feeling momentarily bewildered. He mentioned that they were leaving soon, acting as if the topic had already been settled between them during a previous conversation. Ryumin walked toward the wall and slammed his fist into the concrete, his movements fueled by the strength he had earned in the game. A jagged crack spiderwebbed across the surface, a testament to the fact that his physical power had successfully manifested in the real world. He felt a surge of pride, confirming that his decision to dump his precious game points into his strength stat had been the correct path. He imagined the professional wrestlers of the world trembling before him, confident that he was now the strongest man alive. Meanwhile, the vengeful bully Yenming stood outside their old apartment, his knuckles white as he hammered on the door in a blind rage. He shouted insults at the wood, convinced that the arrogant freak was hiding inside to avoid a confrontation. Yenming held a deep, poisonous grudge over a single look he had received, and he vowed to crush the victim into the dirt. He contemplated blowing the door off its hinges, his vanity fueled by the belief that his new stats made him untouchable. An elderly man approached, squinting at the aggressive youth and asking why he was causing such a disturbance in the hallway. Yenming snarled at the stranger, demanding to know if he was the landlord, only to be told that the man was the new owner. The bully tried to hide his intent, claiming he was just a friend looking for the previous tenant, but the old man saw through the lie. The landlord explained that the apartment was empty and the former residents had moved out without leaving a forwarding address. Yenming's face turned a violent shade of red as he realized his target had slipped through his fingers without a word. High above the city, Ryuan stood in their new penthouse, staring out at the breathtaking view from the 43rd floor. He marveled at the security guards in the lobby and the advanced access cards, feeling the weight of true luxury for the first time. The teenager questioned the 22 million won rent, but Ryumin silenced him by explaining the necessity of a secure base. He told his brother that on the first of every month, players fell into a death-like coma, making them targets for any predator. The older brother wanted to ensure that no one could reach them while they were defenseless and lost within the game world. Ryuan's eyes softened, his frustration replaced by a sudden heavy wave of guilt for his own passive, comfortable existence. He apologized for living in peace while his brother threw himself into a world of monsters and constant life-threatening danger. Ryumin slapped his brother's shoulder, a sharp, grounding gesture designed to shake the boy out of his self-deprecating spiral. He refused to entertain the idea of being a martyr, reminding the teen that they were in this together. A notification pinged on the older brother's phone, revealing that the bully had finally tracked them down to their new building. Ryumin chose to ignore the message, knowing that the real reckoning would not happen in the hallway, but within the game itself. The next morning, the elder brother woke up to find the teenager already packed and standing by the door, ready for the next phase. Ryumin puzzled over his younger brother's sudden, urgent request to purchase rice cakes so early in the day. The strategist found the errand illogical, though he reflected that not every event in this timeline would mirror his previous experiences. When questioned about the motive, the teenager explained that offering treats was a traditional, friendly gesture to welcome themselves to the new building. Ryumin agreed that fostering positive relations with neighbors was a prudent move for their long-term security. The older brother insisted on accompanying the teenager, asking him to wait while he changed into more appropriate attire. They moved through the hallway, ringing the first doorbell and politely introducing themselves as the new residents of the floor. A friendly woman opened the door, greeting the young men with a warm smile that quickly turned to confusion. The neighbor noted their striking physical similarity and mistakenly assumed the duo were twins. The brothers presented the rice cakes with a gentle recommendation to eat them while they were still warm. The woman thanked them sincerely for the kind gesture and promised to enjoy the treat. Ryuwan introduced himself to the next neighbor, a man who accepted the offering with polite surprise. They continued their rounds, handing out gifts to every door while offering the traditional request for good neighborly relations. A mother holding a small child accepted her portion of the pie, thanking the brothers with a pleasant smile. As they reached the final apartment, the older brother noted that these upper floors were reserved for the wealthiest tenants. Ryuwan speculated that their final neighbor might be a celebrity or someone from an elite family background. No one answered their knock at the last door, leading the brothers to believe the unit was currently empty. Ryuwan leaned in, pressing his ear against the cold wood to listen for any signs of life within. Suddenly the door swung open, startling the brothers and revealing a breathtakingly beautiful young woman. The teenager recognized her instantly as the famous actress Siren, his eyes widening at her angelic, ethereal appearance. A large, imposing bodyguard stepped into the doorway, shielding the fragile actress from the two perceived intruders. The wary guard demanded to know their identities, clearly suspecting the brothers were nothing more than obsessive stalker fans. Ryu Min remained unperturbed, calmly apologizing and identifying them as the new neighbors from the floor below. The guard's expression shifted from hostility to surprise as he realized he was facing ordinary residents rather than dangerous fanatics. The bodyguard offered a stiff apology for the misunderstanding, but the younger brother's offer to share the rice cake was met with cold rejection. The guard noted that the celebrity maintained a strict diet, effectively ending the interaction before it could truly begin. He pulled a keycard from his pocket to signal the end of the encounter and ordered the actress to return inside immediately. Siren retreated into the room, though she cast a lingering, curious glance at the two brothers before the door clicked shut. Ryuwan felt a surge of excitement, breathlessly asking his brother if he had noticed the incredible beauty of the star. The older brother dismissed the encounter as a fleeting moment, his mind already focused on far more dangerous concerns. The teenager could not hide his shock that his brother failed to recognize a national icon like Siren. Inside her luxurious apartment, the actress scrolled through her smartphone, her face pale as she read news of a colleague's tragic death. The celebrity pondered the fragility of life, wondering how a successful actor could succumb so easily to panic and despair. She realized that without a powerful rune in the deadly game, her own fate could easily mirror the tragedy she read about online. The actress questioned whether she could have achieved her current status without the heavy financial backing of her management company. Her bodyguard noticed her pensive mood and prompted her to speak with complete candor regarding her fears. Siren confessed her terror of the upcoming game round, and her difficulty adjusting to a world that had transformed into a nightmare. The guard reassured her, promising that as long as he remained by her side, no harm would come to her. The actress recalled how she had initially viewed the bodyguard as a surveillance tool assigned by her agency to monitor her every move. She felt a wave of gratitude, remembering the moment he had repelled a goblin attack and saved her life within the game. The bodyguard turned the conversation to the two brothers, warning the actress that neighbors who sought contact usually wanted something in return. Siren disagreed, noting the genuine, friendly aura that had emanated from the young men at her door. She wondered how a boy as young as 15, like the teenager she had just seen, could possibly survive a round against 100 goblins. The guard dismissed the feat with a sneer, claiming that only a complete fool would struggle against such a low-level threat. Siren thought of the mysterious warrior known as Black Braid, acknowledging him as a professional far beyond the skill level of ordinary players. She hoped that if she ever encountered him again, a partnership might be the key to her survival in the second round. Back in their own home, Ryuwan busied himself with cleaning the apartment, thrilled to have his brother safely returned from his errands. The teenager asked for the results of the lottery, and Ryu Min replied with a casual mention of winning another 15 billion won. Ryuwan worried about the bank's reaction, fearing the financiers might become suspicious of such repeated, impossible luck. The older brother recounted the bank director's intense curiosity, which he had deflected with a vague lie about a divine dream. The teenager felt a pang of discomfort, knowing the elaborate hoax his brother was spinning to hide his true abilities. They discussed the investment of the funds into cryptocurrency, with the strategist assuring his brother that his knowledge of the future guaranteed their success. The brothers enjoyed a gourmet meal at a restaurant overlooking the city, savoring the luxury they had been denied for so long. As dusk fell, they returned to their penthouse, feeling a rare, simple happiness in their shared life. 5 minutes before midnight, the heavy atmosphere of the impending game round settled over the room. Ryu-wan clutched his brother's hand, his voice trembling as he confessed his total dependence on the older man's protection. Ryu-min reminded him of his recent victory over the bully, using it as proof that the teenager was stronger than he believed. The elder promised he would be waiting when the boy opened his eyes, offering a final, grounding smile. As the clock struck, Ryu-min's consciousness faded from the living room, pulling him into the dark, familiar void of the game. Across the city, thousands of other players felt the same pull, their bodies slumping into a death-like coma as the second round began. The participants materialized once more within the familiar, desolate valley that served as the starting point for the lethal game. The players exchanged wary glances, struggling to comprehend the rapid transition back into the world that had nearly claimed their lives. One young woman pointed toward the horizon with a trembling finger, her voice rising in excitement as she identified a specific figure standing apart from the crowd. It was Black Braid, the enigmatic warrior who had secured the first-place ranking, having previously sequestered himself to converse with the divine entities. The seasoned fighter observed the gathering with cold indifference, noting that the sheer weight of his reputation kept the other players at a respectful distance. Yenming appeared in the game space moments later, his gaze sweeping over the assembled participants who had already gathered for the new challenge. Ryu-min observed the scene with a calculating mind, wondering about the precise timing of the celestial arrival and the nature of the upcoming trial. A divine being descended into the center of the clearing, his presence radiating an authority that silenced the murmurs of the anxious crowd. The players stared in bewilderment as they realized this new entity was not the same guide who had presided over the previous round. The second angel informed the group that the previous guide had met an unfortunate fate and was no longer capable of overseeing the proceedings. To prevent an outbreak of panic, the new deity promised that the participants had nothing to fear from this unexpected change in leadership. He announced his formal appointment as the new guide, tasked with directing the players through the challenges that lay ahead. With a flick of his wrist, the angel projected information screens into the air, detailing the primary objective for the second round. The instruction was simple and chilling. Choose a representative for the region within a strict 3-hour time limit. The participants, who had braced themselves for another wave of monstrous slaughter, stared at the screens in collective shock. They noticed a specific detail regarding the number of potential survivors, realizing with overwhelming relief that this round did not require a bloodbath. The deity observed their confusion and offered to clarify the mechanics of the task, explaining that this stage involved no combat. He emphasized that the role of the representative was critical, as that individual would possess the authority to issue orders in future rounds. The angel warned that the consequences for disobeying an elected representative would be fatal, resulting in the immediate death of the defiant player. Every participant would receive a voting ticket within the next 3 hours to cast their ballot for their chosen leader. The players questioned if the round truly lacked the traditional carnage, and the angel confirmed that this phase was intended as a brief respite. Jubilation swept through the valley as the survivors celebrated the prospect of bypassing a direct, violent confrontation with monsters. Despite the relief, some participants eyed one another with suspicion, already coveting the power that came with the title of representative. Yenming expressed his profound disappointment, having spent his time preparing for a physical battle rather than a political vote. His companion attempted to soothe the bully's frustration, reminding him that surviving without the risk of death was the ultimate victory. Yenming remained bitter, lamenting the wasted effort he had poured into strengthening his physical capabilities for a fight that would never occur. Black Scythe overheard the complaints and deduced that Yenming had likely acquired a power rune, given his intense desire to test his strength. The veteran assessed the power balance within the crowd, recognizing patterns from past time cycles that suggested the next 3 hours would be wasted on debate. He knew that for those seeking true progress, the election of a representative was merely a distraction from the real objectives. Hidden quests lay beneath the surface of the main objective, offering strategic advantages that were far more valuable than a simple vote. Black Scythe prioritized reaching level 10 as quickly as possible to unlock unique abilities that would define his future survival. He stepped away from the main crowd and slipped into the dense forest, where he spotted a lone goblin wandering through the brush. The strategist decided to engage the monster, viewing the creature as an easy source of experience points to fuel his rapid growth. The vile creature lunged forward with a primitive dagger, unaware that it was attacking a predator far more dangerous than itself. Black Scythe drew his sword and dagger in one fluid motion, preparing for a strike that would end the encounter before it truly began. With a single, masterful movement, the warrior decapitated the goblin, demonstrating weapon skills that bordered on the supernatural. The system notification confirmed the kill, awarding the hunter bonus experience and 15 gold coins for his efficiency. He moved deeper into the forest with renewed confidence, knowing exactly where the monster populations were concentrated. His intuition proved correct when he stumbled upon an entire pack of goblins, presenting a massive opportunity for an experience harvest. The experienced hunter smirked at the sight of the enemies, feeling no fear as he prepared to face the numerical superiority alone. As the pack charged, Black Scythe unleashed a flurry of attacks, his movements so precise that he barely shifted his stance to claim his kills. Each strike resulted in the instant death of a goblin, the combat resembling the work of a cold, calculated machine. Within minutes, the warrior had dispatched 10 goblins, earning a significant increase in all his core statistics. He checked his status window to find that he had reached level 9, and he immediately invested all available points into dexterity. While most players favored an even distribution of stats, he knew his specific strategy demanded a focused approach to maximize his lethality. Suddenly his sharp hearing picked up a suspicious rustle in the nearby foliage, forcing him to halt his internal calculations. The veteran recognized the signs of a stalker, remembering similar encounters from his past, and turning his gaze toward the hidden observer. He demanded that the watcher reveal themselves, his voice carrying a warning of the dire consequences awaiting anyone who dared to follow him. A graceful foot emerged from the brush, followed by the hesitant form of the famous actress, Siren. She apologized for her intrusion, looking visibly awkward as her vigilant bodyguard stepped out from behind the trees to stand by her side. The celebrity assured the warrior that she meant no harm, hoping to gain the favor of the man who had conquered the first round. The bodyguard introduced himself as Anang Chul, offering a respectful nod to the powerful player standing before them. Black Scythe recognized the man as the right-hand agent of the mysterious Magan Locke, a figure he had marked as a potential ally. He understood that Magan Locke, the son of a corporate mogul, held the influence necessary to accelerate his own growth. The strategist also considered the priestess who would eventually accompany the heavenly demon, marking her as another target for his long-term plans. The hunter realized that this encounter with the bodyguard was not a coincidence, but a strategic opportunity he had not expected to find. He analyzed the connection between the actress and the corporate heir, piecing together the facts that linked their interests. Remaining calm, he questioned their motives for following him, inwardly concerned that this deviation might alter the future he knew. Siren admitted that she had watched him enter the woods and followed him out of curiosity, hoping to secure a partnership. She expressed her admiration for his victory in the initial round, clearly hoping to align herself with the strongest player in the game. The veteran chuckled inwardly at the request, recognizing the one-sided nature of the offer and the actress's desperate need for protection. He rejected the proposal with cold finality, declaring that he preferred to act alone and had no interest in sharing his resources. The actress and her bodyguard were left speechless by his blunt refusal, watching as the warrior dismissed them without a second thought. The bodyguard felt a surge of resentment, wondering how the hunter dared to speak with such arrogance to those of higher social standing. Siren sank to her knees, overcome by the intense pressure of the situation and the crushing weight of her failed plan. The bodyguard lamented the time they had wasted, frustrated that their attempt to secure an alliance had been met with such indifference. As the pair retreated, the bodyguard pondered the necessity of hunting monsters alone, a task they were ill-equipped to handle compared to the expert. Meanwhile, a lone goblin wandered through the forest, blissfully unaware that a black scythe was already moving through the shadows toward it. The hunter dispatched the creature with a swift blow, his mind already focused on the next target in his path. He understood that cooperation was a luxury he could not afford, while the race to level 10 remained his primary objective. The seasoned hunter ventured deeper into the woods, where he encountered a new breed of predator lurking in the shadows. These massive, wolf-like creatures brandished crude weapons, their predatory forms far more formidable than the goblins he had previously dispatched. The strategist instantly assessed the threat, recognizing that these beasts required a more calculated approach than his earlier skirmishes. He felt no trace of fear, only a surge of anticipation as he realized these stronger opponents promised a significant boost to his experience. 5 of the hulking, hyena-like monsters lunged forward in unison, intending to tear the lone man apart with a coordinated assault. Such a pack would have spelled certain death for a normal player, but the warrior stood his ground with cold, unflappable precision. He waited for the exact moment the monsters committed to their charge, his dagger held steady at his side. With a lightning-fast leap, the hunter unleashed a single, fluid strike that caught all 5 creatures in a lethal arc. Their lifeless bodies collapsed to the forest floor, marking the end of the encounter before the monsters could even register his movement. A system notification chimed in his mind, signaling that he had finally reached the coveted 10th level. Encouraged by this milestone, Black Scythe accessed the game store to activate a hidden side quest he had been carefully preparing to trigger. He felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing he was mere steps away from securing the unique class he had long desired. Ordinary players often found themselves in a daze when faced with such quests, unable to grasp the hidden mechanics of the game world. Confused newcomers frequently wandered in circles, failing to locate the necessary advancement items and lacking the knowledge to fulfill special requirements. The hunter knew that only those who met specific, class-unique conditions could ever hope to access the items needed for advancement. A berserker had to spill his own blood to prove his insanity, while assassins were forced to land numerous precise strikes to the back. Every specialization demanded actions that mirrored the very essence of the path the player intended to walk. He recalled his own past, where he had obtained the hunter class by repeatedly stalking monsters and utilizing the dense forest cover. Since discovering the Reaper class, the veteran had chosen no other path, as it perfectly aligned with his ruthless playstyle. With a decisive motion, he applied the rare vial of angel blood to his hand, initiating the irreversible transformation process. The system issued a final warning, asking for confirmation before the character's fundamental nature was permanently altered. Without a second of hesitation, the confident warrior confirmed his choice, fully aware of the power and the consequences that awaited him. The angel's magical blood surged through his veins, rewriting his data and forging him into a powerful reaper, a collector of souls. As a reward for his successful promotion, the system granted him a specialized rune that drastically reduced his detection rate while he remained still in the dark. A legendary scythe, the traditional weapon of his new class, materialized in his grasp, its weight offering a familiar comfort to the experienced player. Increasing his rank unlocked a complex hierarchy of bonuses, providing access to essential class skills and rare equipment. Because he was the first to advance, the system awarded him a neutral skill worth 20,000 gold, prompting the Reaper to test his new ability immediately. He activated the target tracking skill, focusing his intent on his long-standing acquaintance, Yenming. The system pinpointed the target's location 90 meters away, manifesting a glowing navigation line that cut through the trees. The strategist realized his potential victim was nearby, making this the perfect opportunity to settle his personal scores. Meanwhile, the exhausted actress Siren and her bodyguard, Sang Chu, stumbled through the dense brush in a desperate flight for survival. The actress collapsed to the ground, her face pale and her strength completely spent from the grueling pace. She admitted that a leg injury prevented her from continuing, while her alarmed bodyguard insisted that they had to keep moving to avoid capture. Sang Chu attempted to lift his ward, offering words of encouragement, but the celebrity could only offer tearful apologies for her failure. He shared a reassuring theory that injuries sustained within the game would not transfer to their physical bodies in reality. Encouraged by this prospect, Siren promised to endure the agony, hoping to last until the round concluded so they could return home. A cold, mocking voice cut through their conversation, demanding to know the direction of their path and freezing them in their tracks. Yenming and his gang of bandits emerged from the foliage, their expressions twisted with the malice of those who had hunted their prey across the forest. Sang-Chu realized with sinking dread that he could not possibly protect the actress against such overwhelming numerical superiority. He felt a flare of internal anger toward the actress, blaming her incompetence for the fact that they had been cornered in such a dangerous location. Despite the hopelessness of the situation, the loyal defender prepared to stand his ground, determined to fight until the end. Yenming laughed at the bodyguard's display of courage, mocking the absurdity of a single man attempting to resist an entire gang. He gestured for his men to surround them, emphasizing the futility of resistance and the hopelessness of their position. The bodyguard attempted to appeal to the bandits' logic, questioning their motives and suggesting a peaceful separation. The ringleader replied with cynical cruelty, noting that they had no personal grudge, yet confirming they had been hunted for a specific purpose. He revealed that they were not interested in the bodyguard, pointing his weapon directly at the trembling actress behind him. The bandits whispered among themselves, debating whether the girl was truly the famous celebrity or merely a convincing copycat. Yenming dismissed the doubt, deciding that her exact resemblance to the original made her valuable enough for their nefarious purposes. He offered the bodyguard a cold deal, promising him safe passage if he simply abandoned the girl to their mercy. Sang-Chu felt a moment of hesitation, silently cursing that he had not realized the gang's intent earlier, which would have allowed him to escape without conflict. Torn between his survival instinct and his duty to the powerful Magan Lok, the defender ultimately decided to fight. Yenming mocked the old man's stubbornness, asking if he truly believed he could defy the reality of his situation. When the bodyguard tried to appeal to their sense of morality, the gang leader erupted into raucous, derisive laughter. He asked who had made the laws of this game, noting with a sneer that anonymity in the virtual world ensured their total impunity. The bodyguard realized the bandit was correct, his heart heavy with the knowledge that logic held no weight against such cruelty. Just as the bandits prepared to strike, a silhouette emerged from the forest, moving with an unnerving, silent grace. Black Scythe stepped into the clearing, his eyes scanning the confrontation as he silently assessed the potential for his own gain. Yenming started in surprise, not expecting to encounter the champion of the first round in this remote section of the woods. The warrior directly inquired about the nature of the conflict, his voice devoid of emotion as he stared down the leader. When the ringleader attempted to dismiss him, the Reaper offered a sharp warning that his question had not been addressed to him. Seizing the sudden opening, Sang-Chu pleaded for help, hoping the strong player would tip the balance in their favor. Yenming cursed the bodyguard for acting like a rat, fearing that the arrival of the champion would ruin his plans. The Reaper turned his gaze to the gang leader, demanding an answer to the bodyguard's accusations while ignoring the bandits' irritated protests. The tension in the clearing reached a breaking point as the Reaper stepped forward, his resolve clearly focused on intervention. He claimed a personal acquaintance with the pursuers, a statement that chilled the bandits as they realized this was no random encounter. As Yenming demanded to know his true intentions, a massive, ominous scythe materialized in the warrior's hand. The weapon pulsed with a dark red energy, a clear sign of his new class and a harbinger of the retribution he intended to deliver. The Reaper had calculated that saving the actress would earn him the gratitude of Magan Lok, an asset worth far more than the effort of killing these pests. He also harbored a personal desire to punish the bandits for their brazen behavior. Finding their lack of discipline offensive, the gang began to recoil in terror, their leader shouting for a halt as he sensed the sheer lethality radiating from the newcomer. Yenming warned the Reaper of the consequences of interfering, his voice shaking despite his attempt to appear formidable. The unperturbed warrior mockingly asked if the gang would like to share their fight with him instead of the weaker victims. The ringleader simmered with rage, his pride wounded by the insolence of a man who dared to challenge his authority. He recalled how the stranger had decimated the goblins with ease, and now he stood face to face with a nightmare. The bandit leader Yenming stood frozen in the forest, his mind racing as he grappled with the realization that he faced the top-ranked player in the entire game. He stared at the mysterious warrior known as Black Scythe, wondering if any soul in this virtual world possessed the strength to challenge such a terrifying monster. A sudden visible tremor crossed the ringleader's face, betraying a deep-seated shock as he processed the implications of his current predicament. Black Scythe maintained an icy, detached tone, warning his opponents that he preferred a civilized resolution, but was fully prepared to utilize far more brutal methods if they refused. An anxious Yen Ming stammered a question, desperate to secure a guarantee of their freedom if he agreed to meet the stranger's conditions. The ruthless Reaper offered no immediate mercy, instead asserting his absolute authority by demanding that the ringleader kneel in the dirt and beg for his life. Yen Ming recoiled at the suggestion, his pride recoiling at the thought of such public humiliation in the presence of his own men and the beautiful actress. The bully's internal struggle intensified as he weighed the shame of submission against the lethal consequences of defying a man who had already proven his dominance. A sudden, desperate strategy formed in Yen Ming's mind, shifting his perspective from fear to a calculated hope for survival. He reminded himself of his own physical prowess, recalling his ability to shatter stone walls with his bare hands, and convinced himself that a single lucky punch could turn the tide. This surge of ego provided the bandit with a face-saving path, allowing him to reject the humiliating demand while maintaining a facade of strength. He addressed Black Scythe with renewed aggression, flatly refusing to kneel and accusing the warrior of actively seeking his own demise. The cunning ringleader projected a mask of false confidence, planning to close the distance quickly and land a decisive blow while his opponent was distracted. He remained convinced that no human body could withstand the force of his strike, underestimating the legendary skill of the man standing before him. To the collective surprise of the onlookers, Black Scythe defiantly sheathed his weapon, signaling his intention to settle the dispute through hand-to-hand combat. A perplexed Yen Ming struggled to decipher the motive behind such a reckless choice, suspecting that some hidden trick lay beneath the warrior's calm exterior. The Reaper explained his actions with cold simplicity, stating that using a blade against an unarmed opponent would make the victory too trivial to be satisfying. The ringleader reacted with sharp indignation, interpreting the gesture as an insult to his intelligence and accusing the stranger of losing all sense of reality. Black Scythe wasted no time on further rhetoric, vanishing from his position with movement speed that defied the laws of the game. He closed the gap in a blinding flash, rushing toward the stunned gang leader with an aura of absolute, unrelenting determination. Yen Ming sneered at what he perceived as his opponent's foolishness, fully committed to his plan of landing a crushing blow to the warrior's head. The arrogant bandit swung his massive fist with all his might, certain that his strike would end the fight in a triumphant display of power. With superior agility, the experienced warrior drifted aside, allowing the fist to pass harmlessly through the air without making the slightest contact. Yen Ming's expression shifted from triumph to agony as the realization of his catastrophic miscalculation washed over his face. Capitalizing on the opening, Black Scythe drove his knee into the bandit's midsection, catching the overconfident leader completely off guard. The force of the impact launched Yen Ming several meters backward, highlighting the staggering chasm in skill between the two combatants. The Reaper remained rooted to his original spot, his face a mask of bored indifference that emphasized the ease with which he had dispatched his foe. Trembling from the physical shock and the sting of humiliation, Yen Ming cursed his tormentor, refusing to accept the finality of his defeat. Black Scythe responded with a sharp, sarcastic critique of the bandit's foul language, showing nothing but utter contempt for his lack of discipline. To drive home the disparity in their power, the ruthless warrior delivered a swift, punishing kick to the prone enemy, labeling his behavior as unworthy of a true fighter. The victor began a slow, deliberate approach toward the broken ringleader, savoring the total dominance he held over the one-sided engagement. He grabbed the bandit by the collar, hoisting him into the air to ensure he remained in position for the next phase of his retribution. With movements that were nearly impossible to track, Black Scythe unleashed a barrage of rapid-fire punches directly into the bandit's face. The tortured ringleader felt each blow land like the strike of a heavy forging hammer, rattling his senses and clouding his vision. Yenming struggled to comprehend how his own high physical stats were being rendered useless against a man who moved with such effortless, lethal precision. As his consciousness began to fray, the broken bandit agonized over the secret of the Reaper's superiority, failing to grasp that he was witnessing the result of lifetimes of strategic experience. The defeated man watched in mounting horror as Black Scythe continued his assault, his face remaining as cold and impassive as a statue. One of the nearby henchmen made a desperate, panicked move, drawing his bow in a final attempt to salvage the situation. The other bandits shouted in alarm, trying to restrain their comrade, but the archer was already committed to his reckless act. The actress let out an involuntary cry of warning, her eyes wide as she saw the projectile streak toward the center of the clearing. Black Scythe ducked with fluid grace, allowing the arrow to whistle harmlessly past his ear, as if he had anticipated the trajectory all along. The terrified archer realized his single chance had failed, his heart sinking as he understood that a brutal retaliation was now inevitable. The Reaper showed no mercy, turning his attention to the new target and moving in a jagged, unpredictable pattern to avoid any further shots. He taunted the archer, noting that while the man had managed to acquire a weapon, he possessed none of the skill required to wield it effectively. The warrior's scythe materialized in his grip in a fraction of a second, the dark energy pulsing with a hunger for violence. With a single merciless stroke, the Reaper severed the archer's arm, ensuring that he would never again be capable of drawing a bowstring. The remaining gang members erupted into frantic shouts of rage, threatening to tear the intruder apart as they swarmed forward with their daggers. The bald bandit lunged forward with a desperate swing, hoping to land at least one strike against the seemingly invulnerable warrior. Black Scythe met the attack with mocking disdain, questioning the depth of the assailant's confidence in such a futile lunge. He activated a specialized skill, marking the bald man's head with a glowing sigil that signaled his imminent end. The giant scythe carved a lethal arc through the air, moving toward the doomed bandit with an unstoppable, crushing momentum. The Reaper's eyes were locked on his target, burning with a cold, absolute seriousness that left no room for doubt regarding the outcome. Paralyzed by a sudden, overwhelming dread, the bandit froze in place, his body shackled by the chains of pure fear. The remaining onlookers watched in a daze as their comrade lost a portion of his leg, the limb falling away with a sickening ease. One of the surviving bandits fell to his knees, begging for mercy while weeping for the fate of his mangled friend. Ignoring the pleas entirely, the relentless Black Scythe surged toward the remaining members of the gang to finish the massacre. He spoke with chilling detachment, noting that anyone who chose to engage him with a weapon must have accepted the likelihood of their own death. In one seamless, lightning-fast motion, the Reaper carved through the arm of another attacker, instantly ending his hollow resistance. The warrior checked the status of his death mark, mentally noting that the double damage bonus allowed his blade to slice through armor as if it were parchment. With professional calm, Black Scythe surveyed the wreckage of the gang, his scythe dripping with the remnants of his swift, efficient work. He realized the fight had been a triviality, a minor obstacle that required barely a fraction of his current potential. His thoughts turned toward the 100th time cycle, reaffirming his commitment to a path that would not be deterred by such insignificant pests. His primary objective remained clear: to instill such profound, indelible terror in these criminals that they would never again dare to threaten the innocent. The wounded bandits writhed on the forest floor, begging for their lives and attempting to appeal to the victor's sense of humanity. The ruthless Reaper dismissed their pleas with cold logic, pointing out that no one had ever actually died from such wounds in this virtual realm. He recognized that his work was incomplete, turning his gaze toward the last remaining threat hiding in the shadows of the trees. Yenming was attempting to cower behind a tree, but the Reaper mocked the futility of the gesture, pointing out that there was nowhere left to run. With a final, sweeping motion of his weapon, the Avenger declared that there would be no exceptions to the price being paid today. The bandit who had lost his arm began to shriek in agony, his cries echoing through the dense canopy of the woods. The Reaper cut the noise short with an irritated remark, comparing the bandit's pathetic wailing to the complaints of a child. A bitter memory of real-world bullying flickered through the warrior's mind, fueling the cold intensity of his personal vendetta against the ringleader. He whispered to himself that the pain he was inflicting was nothing compared to the suffering he had once endured at the hands of such arrogant scum. Actress C. Arn and the bodyguard Anang Chul stood in silence, watching the carnage with a mixture of shock and profound awe. The bodyguard pondered the sheer, cold-blooded efficiency of a man who could systematically dismantle his opponents even after they had ceased to fight. Despite the visceral brutality of the scene, the professional defender found himself harboring a grudging, deep-seated respect for the stranger's methods. He realized that with such raw talent and unwavering resolve, Black Scythe could potentially challenge the very leaders of the game world. Having restored order to the clearing, the victor turned his attention to the survivors, his demeanor shifting back to a calm, observant state. He inquired about their condition, his voice steady as he assessed the state of the rescued pair. The grateful actress and her bodyguard expressed their sincere thanks, their voices trembling with the relief of having escaped their nightmare. The practical reaper assured them that they could now navigate the forest in safety, as the wounded bandits were in no state to pursue anyone. The couple reiterated their gratitude, their eyes fixed on the man who had shown them the true meaning of courage in a heartless world. The empathetic actress asked if the defeated men would truly survive their injuries, her concern for her attackers reflecting her inherent kindness. Black Scythe observed her compassion with a cynical tilt of his head, mentally categorizing her concern as a dangerous weakness in such a lethal environment. The bodyguard leaned forward, his expression softening as he requested permission to pose a personal yet respectful question. The curious traveler inquired about the strategic reasoning behind sparing the lives of the defeated bandits. The tense young man inwardly recoiled at the question, fearing that any reminder of the game's lethal stakes might provoke a final, violent reprisal from the victor. Satisfied by the insightfulness of the inquiry, the masked warrior noted the guard's demeanor, recognizing the typical caution of a man serving a powerful master. The reaper calmly rationalized his decision, pointing out that the death of the bandits offered no tangible benefit to his own progress. The bewildered bodyguard struggled to grasp this logic, warning that leaving enemies alive invited potential trouble in the future. With a flick of his wrist, the masked fighter gestured toward the pathetic, broken state of his opponents, signaling that they no longer posed a credible threat. He sarcastically characterized the groaning bandits as mere bugs, dismissing the possibility of any future interference from their kind. The astute warrior explained the deeper strategic value of preserving player lives to ensure the total population remained high for the following rounds. The impressed bodyguard finally grasped the cold rationality of the argument, realizing that fewer survivors meant fewer available slots for advancement in the game. Respectfully acknowledging the Reaper's superior understanding of the game's mechanics, the guard recognized the immense strategic depth of his savior. Agreeing with the logic, the bodyguard offered to put the matter of the defeated scum behind them. With the conversation concluded, the pragmatic Reaper announced his immediate departure from the forest clearing. Not wanting to waste further time, the grateful bodyguard attempted to offer a financial reward in the real world, but the offer was met with a firm refusal. The astonished guard could not reconcile such selfless behavior with his own cynical life experience, finding the rejection of material gain deeply baffling. The professional bodyguard resolved to report these findings to his company president, realizing the critical importance of tracking such an extraordinary player. As he walked away, the bodyguard heard only the pitiful sobs of the bandits, who lamented their humiliating defeat in the desolate wilderness. Despite his lingering desire to finish off the enemies, the disciplined guard held back, choosing to honor the strategic vision of the masked warrior. Meanwhile, a veritable nightmare unfolded in a distant valley, where distraught players struggled to choose a regional representative. Irritated participants traded vicious insults, questioning each other's eligibility for the prestigious and powerful status of leader. Peaceful players attempted to mediate the escalating conflict, fearing that the volatile atmosphere would soon erupt into full-scale violence. A self-proclaimed candidate criticized the impulsiveness of his rivals, offering himself as a more reasonable alternative for the important position. A self-righteous participant attempted to sway the crowd with his family ties, citing his congressman father as proof of his inherent worthiness. Skeptical players openly mocked these claims, questioning the veracity of such high-ranking connections in a world where status was earned through blood. Suddenly, the chaotic arguments were cut short by an imperious voice demanding absolute silence. The mint-haired strategist reminded the group of the 2-hour time limit until the voting closed, urging them not to waste precious seconds on empty bickering. Interested players inquired about potential solutions for the selection deadlock, to which the mint-haired man confidently claimed to have a perfect plan. The crowd waited with bated breath for his explanation, desperate for an end to the grueling confrontation. The self-assured strategist mentally noted the pliability of the gathered players, already anticipating the successful application of his secret persuasion rune. He realized that his magical ability would be effective in these circumstances, just as it had proven its worth on previous occasions. Thinking back to his initial disappointment upon receiving the rune, he realized how wrong his first assessment had been. Initially, the ability seemed useless against mindless monsters, but he had soon discovered its true potential in the context of human manipulation. During the first round, he had observed another player desperately fighting goblins, which sparked the idea for his devious scheme. Taking advantage of the chaos, he had shouted about a woman in distress, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Under the influence of the rune, those who heard his manufactured plea rushed to assist, abandoning their own tasks to follow his lead. Using similar tactics, he had stolen kills from others, easily racking up 100 victories without taking any personal risk. Convinced of his method's efficacy, the ambitious manipulator expected to easily secure the position of chairman. He suggested a structured approach, proposing that they identify 5 candidates and then select the most deserving among them. The practical suggestion received general approval from the crowd, who recognized the constructiveness of the idea. Satisfied with their support, he moved to nominate candidates by a simple show of hands from those willing to participate. He cleverly implemented a rule forbidding self-nomination, effectively preventing a repeat of the previous chaos. The self-styled son of a congressman was visibly disappointed when he heard the ban, as it ruined his ambitious plans for personal glory. The crowd unanimously supported the proposal, cheering for the structured approach to solving their dilemma. As participants pondered potential candidates, the manipulator realized that only those who stood out would be named. One participant proposed that the strategist himself become the chairman, a move that perfectly aligned with the organizer's secret expectations. The supporting player argued that the representative should be an intelligent leader, pointedly gesturing toward the man who had organized the meeting. Additional voices noted the mint-haired man's ability to manage the crowd, further strengthening his candidacy. As he began to humbly thank the group for their trust, he was unexpectedly interrupted by a demand to nominate the first-round champion, Black Scythe. The strategist anticipated this development, realizing the inevitability of the best player from the previous challenge being mentioned. The meeting continued with the nomination of the second and third place winners, Life Documentary and Black Dragon. To conclude the results, the organizer announced 4 candidates, leaving room for one more if anyone had additional suggestions. When no new names were offered, the strategist suggested that each nominee deliver a brief keynote speech. Taking advantage of his status, he insisted on speaking first, planning to maximize the power of his persuasion rune. As he began a high-pitched speech about ruling the server, he was abruptly interrupted by a rude demand to shut up. Stunned by the backlash, the mint-haired fellow turned around, eager to see who had dared to disrupt his carefully laid-out plan. To his surprise, his opponent was the hulking man known as Life Documentary, the runner-up from the previous round. The aggressive man flatly refused to listen, defiantly shattering the atmosphere of respect the strategist had worked so hard to create. The bewildered organizer asked for the reason behind such hostile behavior, but the insightful rival simply accused everyone present of being docile. He compared the crowd to horses mindlessly following the instructions of a manipulator, causing the strategist to panic as he feared his secret skill had been exposed. The angry man expressed his contempt for the entire selection process, labeling the organizer a mere entrepreneur. The strategist tried to regain control, accusing his opponent of crossing the line of decency. He remained confident in the effects of his rune, believing his words would eventually sway the aggressor. However, the rude man was only further enraged by the attempt to lecture him, culminating in an open threat to the strategist's life. With growing horror, the organizer realized the impossible truth. His persuasion skill had absolutely no effect on this man. The aggressor moved to direct threats, demanding a vote for his own candidacy on pain of death. The shocked strategist wondered how such an unstable person could ever be considered a representative. In a desperate attempt to regain control, he urged the man to stop embarrassing himself and walk away. This proved a fatal mistake, as the words pushed the aggressor's rage to a critical point of no return. In a flash, a dagger materialized in the man's hand, and he cold-bloodedly stabbed one of the bystanders. The strategist watched in horror, stunned by the sudden, drastic turn of events. The murderer showed no remorse, coldly reminding the crowd of his previous warning. He promised a similar fate to anyone who refused to vote for him, effectively turning the meeting into a hostage situation. The crowd reacted with panic and outrage, calling the killer a murderer and struggling to believe the violence was real. The assassin ignored the accusations, arrogantly challenging the survivors to attack him if they dared. He sadistically enjoyed the crowd's reaction, smirking as he threatened to begin a campaign of self-mutilation if he met further resistance. Executing his threat, the madman began to cut through the crowd, methodically killing one person after another. Reveling in the chaos, the maniac rejoiced in the absence of any authority or video cameras to stop his murderous bacchanalia. He addressed the survivors, threatening to harass everyone in the next round if they did not vote him into power. The terrified people realized they had no choice but to submit to the tyrant for their own survival. Smug in his victory, the bloodthirsty killer anticipated absolute power, already planning to make Black Scythe his first victim. Just as the time for voting arrived, the carnage was interrupted by the heavy, silent arrival of a new, looming presence. The system abruptly transported every player in the region back to the starting valley, granting the exhausted survivors a brief moment of respite. Participants materialized in the open space, looking around in confusion as they realized they had been relocated without any warning or consent. Newcomers scanned the area only to recoil in horror at the scattered corpses left behind by the recent psychopathic rampage. The actress stared at the carnage with trembling eyes, while the masked man known as Black Braid grimly acknowledged that the ringleader had once again achieved dominance through sheer brutality. Black Braid reflected on the nature of his rival, a man whose undeniable combat talent was consistently overshadowed by an uncontrollable and violent temper. The seasoned strategist mused that while he had correctly identified the ticking time bomb, he deeply regretted the unnecessary bloodshed that had already occurred. He reminded himself that the time for a final, decisive confrontation had not yet arrived, requiring him to maintain his composure and wait for the right moment. The aggressive man known as Life Documentary spotted his rival and stormed toward him, demanding to know where the Reaper had been hiding during the chaos. Black Braid remained entirely unperturbed, calmly questioning why the gang leader felt entitled to an explanation when there had been no prior interaction between them. The impatient bandit grew more arrogant, openly demanding that the strongest player of the first round submit to his authority immediately. Feigning ignorance, the Reaper interrogated the reasoning behind such an absurd demand, intentionally provoking the aggressor into revealing his true colors. The bandit naively believed in his own superiority, offering to spare the Reaper's life if he simply agreed to become a subordinate. Black Braid snorted with cold disdain, finding the suggestion of a cocky, short-sighted opponent to be nothing more than a pathetic joke. The provoked bandit demanded to know if the Reaper truly wanted to fight, blissfully unaware of the massive gap in their actual combat capabilities. Calmly shifting the power dynamic, the veteran warrior suggested that his opponent kneel instead, if he wished to preserve his own life for a few more minutes. Life Documentary was visibly outraged by such audacity, unable to process the fact that someone he deemed weaker would dare to defy him. The self-righteous psychopath clung to his belief that his impending status as the region's representative made him an untouchable figure of authority. Ignoring the empty threats, Black Braid began to materialize his signature weapon, demonstrating his absolute readiness for a lethal encounter. He summoned the legendary scythe into his hand, looking at his opponent with a chilling lack of fear that unsettled the surrounding crowd. The bandit fell into a stunned silence, clearly taken aback by the sudden appearance of such an intimidating and powerful weapon. Black Braid mocked the sudden quiet of his usually talkative adversary, pointing out that the balance of power had shifted entirely in his favor. The gang leader struggled to find words, realizing for the first time that he was facing an opponent who was truly out of his league. Desperate to save face, the bandit declared that he would never bow to a mere kid, stubbornly clinging to his title as the ringleader. He defiantly brandished his weapon, arrogantly assuming that his own strength would be enough to overcome the Reaper's mysterious edge. Blackbraid was merely amused by these childish provocations, deciding that it was time to end the useless posturing before the next phase began. The strategist understood that if his rival gained more political power through the voting process, it would only complicate matters for the upcoming third round. He decided that keeping the aggressive man alive as a representative might actually serve his own long-term interests during the later stages of the game. Drawing upon memories from previous cycles, the experienced player sensed the air shifting as he anticipated the imminent arrival of the divine being. The angel manifested before the players in a flash of light, standing with an air of cold, celestial indifference. Blackbraid took the opportunity to address the gang leader, sarcastically noting that he was lucky to have survived the day thanks to the intervention of others. He offered a calm warning, advising the bandit to choose his future targets more carefully if he wished to avoid an early death in the game. Life Documentary was left completely baffled, unable to form a coherent retort as he processed the sudden display of strength from his rival. Acknowledging a temporary defeat, the bandit promised that he would seek his revenge as soon as he officially secured the representative status. The angel looked down at the gathering with total apathy, showing zero concern for the lives lost or the suffering the players had endured. Without a hint of emotion, the celestial entity announced the start of the official voting process to select the representative for the region. The system informed every participant that they had exactly one vote, and the individual with the highest total would be crowned the new chairman. The angel urged the players to make an informed choice, warning that any person who failed to cast a vote within 5 minutes would be executed immediately. As the countdown timer began to tick, the players agonized over their decision, fully aware that their survival depended on the outcome. Fear drove the majority of the crowd to cast their votes for Life Documentary, as they remained terrified of his threats and violent tendencies. The bandit suddenly noticed a girl with the nickname Chubby Cheek Bun, and he immediately fixated on her with a predatory glare. He publicly accused her of voting for someone else, using the moment to threaten everyone present with death if they dared to defy his will. Once the time elapsed, the angel expressed satisfaction with the process, noting that every single player had participated as instructed. The final tally revealed Life Documentary in first place and Blackbraid in second, a result clearly influenced by the atmosphere of fear. The bandit felt smug in his victory, though he harbored deep suspicion that some players had still dared to vote against him despite the risks. The celestial being formally declared Life Documentary the regional representative, bestowing upon him the authority to command others during future trials. The newly elected man was intoxicated by his own success, already plotting how he would use his new power to destroy the Reaper. His excitement vanished when the angel revealed that his command authority was limited to only 10 uses in total. Even worse, the system restricted his orders to classless players only, meaning those who had already obtained a class were immune to his influence. The angel then announced the existence of a hidden quest, intended to lead players toward obtaining an improved class and specialized equipment. Confused participants whispered among themselves, struggling to understand the mechanics of a task that most of them had not even known existed. The divine being explained that the quest window only appeared for those who reached level 10, a milestone most had failed to achieve. When the players complained about the lack of monsters to fight, the angel mocked them, pointing to the forest as an obvious source of experience. The entity revealed that only 80 people from all regions had successfully managed to obtain a class during this round. Drawing everyone's attention to the results, the angel displayed a list that stunned the entire room into silence. Blackbraid was the only player in their entire region who had successfully completed the additional quest and advanced to a new class. The other participants looked at the warrior with a mixture of awe and confusion, wondering how he possessed the knowledge to achieve such a feat. The rare Reaper class appeared incredibly powerful, raising even more questions about how a common player could have unlocked it. Life Documentary felt a surge of pure frustration, realizing that his new authority was useless against the one person he wanted to crush. The angel noted that the ranking for the second round was determined by the speed of quest completion, marking Blackbraid as the fastest in all regions. With genuine admiration, the celestial being set a record, acknowledging the player's performance as the best in the history of the game. The angel questioned why the warrior chose such a fitting name, asking if he had possessed prior knowledge of his future class. Blackbraid gave an evasive, polite answer, effectively masking the fact that he was navigating through his second time around the cycle. Inwardly, the Reaper realized that even the angels were ignorant of the true methods to obtain this unique class, confirming his own hidden advantage. The divine being pointed out that the warrior was the only person in the region immune to the new chairman's commands. The angry chairman cursed the angel for revealing such information, realizing that his power was far more limited than he had originally hoped. The celestial entity ignored his outburst and prepared to reward Blackbraid for his exceptional achievement. With a simple snap of his fingers, the angel brought the current round to an end, signaling the start of the reward distribution. Presented with a choice of armor, the rational strategist rejected the heavy, cumbersome options, choosing instead to boost his experience to prepare for the challenges ahead. The gaming phase concluded with the distribution of rewards, signaling the forced return of all participants to the waking world. The celestial angel announced the mandatory departure, reminding every player that their next meeting in the deadly game was inevitable. As the participants transitioned back into reality, the Supreme Being promised a continuation of the ordeal that would be incredibly fun. With a sinister smile curling his lips, the deity guaranteed that their future experiences would remain truly unforgettable for all. Anticipating the suffering of the doomed mortals, Huang Unun awakened in his home after enduring a humiliating beating within the game. Returning to real life with pure amazement, the former bully examined his entire hand, struggling to believe it remained intact. With a sense of maddening joy, the bully confirmed his theory that his body fully recovered after exiting the game, regardless of injuries. However, the lingering horror he experienced taught him to avoid any future confrontation with the creepy guy who possessed such ruthless strength. Meanwhile, the loyal bodyguard turned toward his ward, the famous actress, and noted her commendable efforts during the past challenge. The modest girl attempted to downplay her own merits, insisting that the effective defense provided by her devoted bodyguard saved the day. The loyal guard felt embarrassed by her praise, remembering his own recent fleeting desire to abandon his charge, but he responded with professional composure. The grateful actress expressed a sincere desire to thank the mysterious Blackbraid for his timely rescue, inquiring about ways to reach him. The bodyguard explained the impossibility of finding their savior in the real world because the warrior carefully concealed his appearance and identity. Sang Chul recalled the offer of a financial reward and the mysterious warrior's cold refusal, relating it to his clear desire for total anonymity. The experienced defense attorney suggested that a simple bank account number could serve as a potential lead to identify their savior in reality. The pragmatic bodyguard offered an alternative, suggesting they find their benefactor in the next round and express gratitude through a rare game item. The imaginative actress agreed with the plan, pondering what kind of worthy gift would serve as an appropriate thank you for the stranger. Leaving the ward's apartment, the bodyguard received an unexpected and late-night call from his immediate superior, the influential President Ma. Surprised by the timing, Sang Chul recognized the boss's chronic insomnia and answered the phone with a sense of urgent respect. Diluted by whiskey after his return from the gaming world, the supervisor inquired about the recent incidents, showing concern for his subordinate. The bodyguard briefly reported reaching level 8 and attacking mid-round, but he refrained from going into unnecessary details over the phone. The professional security guard offered a personal meeting to provide a detailed report, inquiring about a time that suited the supervisor. The shrewd President Ma immediately inquired if the incident involved the mysterious player known as the Black Scythe. Upon receiving confirmation, the influential leader ordered his right-hand man to come immediately to the hotel for a comprehensive and private report. The executive bodyguard headed toward his boss, completely unaware that he remained under the silent surveillance of the calculating Ryu Ming. The attentive Reaper watched the bodyguard's car drive away, carefully analyzing the route of his potential future companion. The experienced strategist correctly surmised the true purpose of the trip, which was a formal report on the recent game events. 10 minutes earlier, Ryu Ming had activated his unique ability, prompting the system to display the target's face for precise tracking. The calculating Reaper decided to follow Sang Chul, utilizing a unique tracking ability gained as a rare bonus to his own class. The tracking system showed the target near the penthouse, and the rapidly changing numbers indicated movement within the elevator. Realizing the haste of the situation, a determined Ryu Ming quickly threw on his jacket and ran out of his house. He felt anxious not to miss this valuable chance to learn more about the internal hierarchy of the powerful organization. Walking down to the building's parking lot, the astute strategist rejoiced at the timely start of the stakeout immediately upon returning from the game. At the same time, President Ma pondered the perfect conditions for pursuit created by the special moon phase on this mysterious night. President Ma realized that sleep would have to be postponed, as the issue of the mysterious black braid required his immediate attention. Not every player managed to rank first in both the first and second rounds, and the executive's intuition suggested something was amiss. An unsettling premonition of a dangerous presence worried the leader, who feared a possible attack on his most loyal subordinate. The thought of someone targeting his right-hand man increased the president's anxiety and internal tension. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the determined leader understood the impossibility of taking direct action under such volatile circumstances. Philosophically, the president noted that an attack on his right hand amounted to a direct challenge to his own authority. Mahan Lakach, the eldest son of the company owner and an influential director, sat in his elegant office with deep concentration. From behind the heavy door came the voice of his loyal subordinate, asking for permission to enter for a long-awaited conversation. The director greeted the department head who entered, expressing his joy at seeing him, to which the bodyguard responded with mutual deference. The grateful subordinate attributed his successes to the influence of his supervisor, although the latter modestly noted he was in a different region. The devoted right-hand man emphasized the motivating power of the president's existence, to which the director responded with a remark of pleasant flattery. Sincerely insisting on the truth of his words, the department head congratulated his supervisor for successfully surviving the latest game challenge. The cocky principal waved off the congratulations, comparing the difficulty of the second round to the ease of taking candy from a baby. The right-hand man congratulated the boss for advancing in the game, but the humble executive attributed his success to sheer luck. Philosophically, the subordinate remarked that luck was also a kind of skill that helped the strong survive the trials. Emphasizing the improbability of achieving such high rankings, the bodyguard declared there was no greater pride than serving such a distinguished leader. The astute director suspected an ulterior motive in the excessive compliments, suggesting the subordinate had a specific request in mind. The straightforward director demanded disclosure of the true intentions, which visibly embarrassed the loyal subordinate. The embarrassed man finally dared to ask for help in obtaining an advanced item, exposing the true purpose of his late-night visit. The director confidently stated that obtaining items dropped by monsters in the game world was not a particularly complicated task. Mentally, the leader noted that his own success was due to the unique ability the Dark Knight gained during the game. The influential player recalled the moment when the angel suggested that every participant check their inventory for a prepared gift. Following the angel's instructions, the future heavenly demon discovered a rune that opened access to the Dark Knight class at level 10. The sitting principal realized the incredible luck of receiving such a powerful item as a random bonus during the first round. Despite his familial attitude toward his subordinate, the cautious leader could not reveal the whole truth about his secret advantage. Mindful of the fickleness of human nature and returning to the topic, the director demanded information about the attacker. With a cold intonation, the influential leader asked if the mysterious attacker was the player known as the Black Scythe. The subordinate immediately refuted the assumption, explaining that the reality of the situation was just the opposite of what the director feared. He explained that the Black Scythe had saved them from imminent doom in the forest. The incredulous director interjected, demanding details of this unexpected turn of events that had spared his valuable employee. The bodyguard detailed the situation, emphasizing that without the intervention of the Black Scythe, they would have died without a chance. A loyal employee noted that even if she had survived, the actress would have suffered severe psychological trauma incompatible with her work. The thoughtful director realized the magnitude of the potential disaster, which included the loss of a valuable employee and the collapse of business. The curious leader inquired about the fate of the assailant, assuming his destruction by the determined savior. The subordinate explained the surprising wisdom of Black Braid, who only beat his attacker rather than killing him. The bodyguard noted that the warrior realized the futility of reducing the total number of players during the early stages of the game. The astute director agreed with the logic but expressed concern about the possible future actions of the surviving enemies. Reflecting on the events, the director realized his debt to the savior who had protected important company property. Surprised by the refusal to accept payment, the director suggested that concealment of identity was the likely cause of the warrior's behavior. The influential leader instructed his subordinate to pass on the award in the next round, expressing his sincere gratitude for the rescue. Additionally, the director ordered him to keep a close eye on the mysterious savior, emphasizing his rule to always pay his debts. The obedient subordinate agreed to the instructions, preparing to carry out the order as soon as the next round began. When the director remembered an important matter, he inquired about the strikers, seeking all information about what happened in the forest. At the same moment, Ryu Ming stood outside, continuing his surveillance of the powerful headmaster's right-hand man. The observant young man noted the loyalty of the subordinate who went to report to his superiors despite the late hour. Having obtained the necessary information about the destination, the judicious pursuer decided to return, avoiding any unnecessary suspicion. The analytically minded Reaper noted the amazing coincidence that a celebrity sponsored by the company lived in the same house as him. The grateful older brother acknowledged the younger brother's merit, noting that without the distribution of rice cakes, this discovery would never have happened. The strategist realized the value of neighborhood ties to build trust with the influential director. Though he had not yet decided on his inclusion in the final team, the rational Ryu Ming considered using those ties to gain trust. Objectively evaluating the situation, the experienced player recognized the exceptional power of the Dark Knight's ability, which was comparable to a cheat. However, the pragmatic strategist also considered the drawbacks, such as the lack of bonuses for passing and the prerequisite of becoming a knight. The analytical mind highlighted the main disadvantage, which was the need to accumulate unique dark mana unavailable through normal means. Philosophically, Ryu Ming noted the paradoxical correspondence of this ability to the director's unhealthy fascination, making it a perfect match for his personality. The cautious strategist remained aware of the dangers of including an apparent psychopath on the team, despite his exceptional fighting qualities. Making an informed decision, the experienced Reaper decided to keep the director as a candidate, using him only under favorable circumstances. As he planned his next moves, the visionary player kept other talented candidates in mind, intending to get to work after dawn. Meanwhile, in a dingy store, a disgruntled employee sat immersed in gloomy reflections on his own unenviable fate. The weary salesman sat behind his counter, his brow furrowed as he tallied the dwindling revenue of his small convenience store. He sighed heavily, calculating that the recent suspension of lottery ticket sales would cut his monthly income in half. The shop door chimed, and his daughter Julie stepped inside, her presence instantly brightening the dim atmosphere of the room. She greeted her father with a soft smile, though her eyes lingered on his slumped shoulders with genuine concern. The distressed shopkeeper explained the government's sudden decision to halt ticket sales, citing the unpredictable impact of player abilities on the game's economy. He lamented the bleak future of their business, feeling trapped by circumstances beyond his control. Julie approached her father, offering a reassuring touch and promising to find a part-time job immediately after her upcoming graduation. The proud man shook his head, insisting that he would manage their finances without sacrificing his daughter's education. He reminded her of her stellar grades and her long-held dream of becoming a doctor, urging her to focus on her future. The selfless girl looked at her father and firmly declared that her family's survival outweighed any personal ambition she might have held. Struck by the weight of their financial ruin, the father momentarily lost his composure and blurted out a grim prediction about his daughter's survival in the next game round. He recoiled instantly, horrified by his own words, and apologized profusely for the dark thoughts born of his desperation. Julie comforted him, absolving him of guilt while acknowledging the strange and dangerous era that had descended upon mankind. To lift his spirits, she revealed that she had successfully awakened a class after surviving the second round of the game. She extended her hand and a soft green aura bloomed, casting a warm, restorative light over her father's tired face. The shopkeeper gasped as the mysterious energy washed over him, feeling a sudden, inexplicable surge of vitality coursing through his veins. Overwhelmed by the magic, he demanded to know what she had done, his skepticism fading into pure astonishment. Julie explained that she had obtained the priest class, which granted her the power to bolster the physical characteristics of others. The impressed father felt stronger than he had in years, and for the first time he truly believed that they might navigate these troubled times. Just then the store bell rang again, signaling the arrival of a visitor who stepped through the entrance with quiet purpose. The shopkeeper recognized the young man immediately as Ryu Ming, the legendary player who had famously predicted the winning lottery numbers on 100 tickets. Julie watched from the side, curious about the identity of the newcomer who seemed to hold such significance for her father. Ryu Ming offered a polite greeting, his expression calm and composed as he waited for the store owner to acknowledge him. The clerk confirmed his recognition of the visitor, but couldn't help but ask what brought such a famous individual to their humble shop. The young man bowed his head slightly, offering a sincere apology for the unintentional fallout his lottery wins had caused for the family business. He expressed genuine remorse for the financial hardship he had inadvertently imposed upon them. The magnanimous owner waved off the apology, insisting that they would find a way to get by without the lottery revenue. Ryu Ming remained unmoved by the dismissal, his sense of principle driving him to make amends for the trouble he had caused. He reached into his pocket and placed a thick envelope containing 10 million won on the counter, intending to cover their losses. The shopkeeper stared at the stack of cash in disbelief, his hands trembling as he refused to accept such an exorbitant sum. Ryu Ming did not argue, simply turning and walking out of the store, leaving the stunned owner and his daughter with the unexpected fortune. The shopkeeper agonized over the morality of keeping the money, feeling it was far too much for a mere stranger to offer. Julie grabbed the envelope and darted out the door, determined to return the misplaced gift to the benefactor. She sprinted down the street, calling out for the young man to stop and wait for her. Ryu Ming halted his pace and turned around, his features neutral as he observed the determined girl approaching him. As she drew closer, Julie recognized him as a classmate from her own institution, though she was shocked that he had never spoken to her before. She asked if he truly didn't remember their shared classes, and he offered a polite, practiced excuse about having a poor memory for faces. Inwardly, Ryu Ming knew exactly who she was, the shopkeeper's daughter with the rare priest class, and he had been waiting for this exact moment. He saw the encounter as a stroke of fate, a perfect opportunity to bring a useful ally into his orbit. He accepted her invitation to talk, leading her to a secluded bench in a nearby public garden. Julie held out the money, insisting that she could not accept such an amount from a classmate. Ryu Ming remained firm, telling her to keep the money and use it as she saw fit, treating the sum as if it were a triviality. The girl struggled to find a compromise, eventually offering to keep only 1 million won as a fair payment for their losses. Ryu Ming suggested that she consult her father, expertly shifting the burden of the decision to make her feel more in control. He acted as if he had only just realized her father was the shopkeeper he had visited earlier, feigning surprise to smooth over the interaction. Julie felt a mix of embarrassment and fascination, wondering how someone so famous could be so detached from his surroundings. The young man took the opportunity to suggest they exchange contact information, framing it as a standard gesture between peers. Julie handed over her phone, her initial wariness giving way to a growing curiosity about the enigmatic student. As they parted ways, Ryu Ming left her with the impression of a fateful meeting, planting the seeds of a future alliance. Julie stood alone in the garden, clutching the money and reflecting on the strange, complex character of her classmate. She remembered the day she had seen him beaten at school and how she had called the police to ensure his safety. She recalled his strange calm at his part-time job, which had revealed a hidden, iron-willed strength beneath his quiet exterior. That moment of realization had sparked a deep, undeniable interest in the boy who now held her attention completely. She realized then that her life had changed the moment their paths crossed in the alleyway, and she knew she would see him again soon. The shy girl admitted to herself that she lacked the courage to speak directly, despite her intense desire to draw closer to the enigmatic young man. Paradoxically, her growing feelings only made her more timid, preventing her from initiating a simple conversation during their chance encounter. Encouraged by this unexpected opportunity, the determined girl promised herself to be bold, viewing the meeting as a genuine sign from heaven. Having received the 10 million won, she realized that ignoring his existence was no longer an option, forcing her to shift her strategy. Practical and thoughtful, she decided that taking her classmate out to lunch was the perfect way to express her gratitude and continue their socialization. Sitting in the quiet of his room, the young man received a message offering lunch, which reflected a sense of obligation following his generous monetary gift. The astute strategist appreciated the sense of duty that had arisen, viewing the gesture as an excellent investment in their future relationship. The calculating reaper planned to strengthen their friendship, intending to transform the girl into a reliable ally for the deadly game ahead. His long-term goal was to save her and bring her safely to the final 20th round, ensuring the survival of a valuable companion. While preparing to leave, the protagonist was noticed by his observant younger brother, who showed immediate curiosity about his sudden plans. The concerned sibling directly asked about his brother's destination, receiving an unexpected answer about meeting a familiar girl from school. The surprised junior interrogated him about the nature of this acquaintance with unconcealed interest, displaying typical fraternal nosiness. A calm and collected Ryu Ming confirmed the lunch plans, instructing his brother not to wait for him and to eat on his own schedule. The elder's unexpected social engagement caused the younger brother, who was unaccustomed to seeing Ryu Ming interact with the opposite sex, to freeze in genuine shock. The stunned boy stood with his mouth agape, unable to process the reality that his withdrawn brother was actually going on a date. Meanwhile, the two classmates were already seated in a cozy establishment, passionately discussing their shared love of juicy steaks. The grateful girl expressed her sincere pleasure at the selected dishes, visibly enjoying the treat provided by her generous classmate. Inwardly excited, she could hardly believe the reality of the situation, considering this lunch the best day of her life. Perusing the atmosphere of the chosen establishment, the admiring girl noted the exceptional coziness of the surroundings. Feeling a slight awkwardness hanging between them, the determined girl realized the necessity of initiating a meaningful conversation. Showing the courage she had promised herself, she inquired about the phenomenal luck of her classmate who had won the lottery 14 times in a row. Reluctantly, the young man attributed his success to dreams containing the right numbers, offering the simplest possible explanation. Modestly, he noted that the winnings were sufficient for a trouble-free life, mentioning only security concerns as a new, manageable problem. The interested classmate turned the conversation toward the first round of the game, asking about the difficulty of slaying goblins. Supporting the conversation, the young man confirmed the labor-intensive nature of the process, and when asked about his region, he vaguely mentioned a figure ending in 5. A frustrated girl noted her own belonging to the region with the last number 7, regretting the impossibility of being tested together. The inwardly experienced strategist saw no cause for sadness, knowing the inevitable unification of regions as the number of survivors dwindled. The proud girl shared her good fortune of finding an item that allowed her to change her class to a powerful priestess. Explaining the features of her new class, the enthusiastic girl mentioned the ability to impose positive effects and combat buffs. The enterprising classmate offered to demonstrate an amplification blessing that increased all of the subject's physical characteristics. Without restricting herself to words, the practical girl cast the effect on her companion, just as she had previously done for her father. After feeling the surge of power, the perceptive young man recognized the strength of the effect and the merit of such a unique class. Satisfied with the sudden reinforcement, the pragmatic strategist noted the added benefit of a chance encounter that exceeded all his initial expectations. Recalling his past experience, the inquisitive young man shared information about the reward for a side quest involving a bag of gold dependent on the luck parameter. To his intrigued classmate, he explained the mechanism, noting that the higher a player's luck score, the greater the amount of winnings. The obliging girl offered additional reinforcements in the future, emphasizing the ease of providing such a service whenever he might need it. Noting her reticence, the attentive young man reminded her of the desire she had to tell him something, which she confirmed by confessing her intention to speak first. The grateful daughter conveyed words of appreciation from her father, expressing the entire family's thanks for the unexpected financial assistance. The girl promised to return the funds eventually, but the interested young man wondered if that was truly all she had to say. Intuitively sensing the incompleteness of her gratitude, the resourceful classmate offered to let her repay him in another way, instead of money. Suddenly, a mysterious object appeared in the girl's hands, immediately attracting the intense curiosity of the attentive young man. Explaining the origin of the artifact obtained during her hunt, the persistent girl categorically forbade him from even thinking about refusing her gift. Saying goodbye after their pleasant lunch, the satisfied classmates acknowledged the wonderful time they had spent in each other's company. Returning home, the satisfied strategist noted the successful progress of his plan, which had unfolded exactly in line with his expectations. The intrigued young man opened his inventory to investigate the mysterious item received from his generous classmate. Despite the vague description of the item's effects, the strategist was pleasantly surprised by a gift that far exceeded his initial estimations. Upon pragmatic reflection, the patient player decided to delay unlocking the item's full potential until he reached the 20th level. Looking back at the game mechanics, the experienced Reaper noted that the combination function only unlocked once a player reached that specific milestone. This rare feature made it possible to combine a weapon with a magic crystal, opening up a variety of powerful additional capabilities. Methodically listing the properties, the strategist recalled that red crystals granted damage, while orange crystals increased overall strength. Continuing his classification, he noted that the yellow crystal increased luck, which was especially valuable for his particular style of play. The young man remembered that green increased dexterity, while the blue crystal affected intelligence, further empowering the player. He did not forget the azure crystal, which reduced susceptibility to damage, or the rarest purple crystal, which surpassed all others in value. Highlighting the exclusivity of the purple crystal, the strategist noted its unique ability to increase all characteristics at once. Realizing the rarity of the item he held, the grateful fellow appreciated obtaining such a treasure without any significant effort. Objectively assessing his current situation, the astute young man recognized that his high luck rates, even in reality, were contributing to his success. Planning to use the crystal upon reaching level 20, the practical strategist decided to use a temporary enhancement to open his gold pouch. Consistently, the prepared player took out a pre-bought bag of 100 to activate his butcher's rune. In explaining the mechanics, the methodical strategist reminded himself of the 1% increase in stats for every kill of a living creature. Noting the lack of insects in the game world, the resourceful player rejoiced at the loophole that allowed him to avoid killing monsters for activation. Showing his respect for life, the polite young man apologized to the tiny parasites before their inevitable destruction for his own cause. After effectively activating the rune, his luck rose from 15 to an impressive 45 points, which boded well for his future. Without wasting any time, the determined young man opened his inventory to use the gold bag obtained earlier in the game world. When thinking about the potential amount, the realistic player understood the impact of his luck indicator on the outcome, not excluding the variability of the drop. Drawing on past experience, the analytical mind recalled dropping amounts of 3,000 to 6,000 gold in previous attempts. Eagerly awaiting the outcome, the excited strategist anticipated a significant increase in his wealth due to his boosted luck. When he finally opened the bag, the shocked young man's face changed dramatically as he looked at the result. Stunned by the incredible number before him, the maximum possible amount of 9,999 gold fully justified all his preparations. Having accumulated an impressive 16,000 gold, the satisfied strategist considered the sum sufficient to purchase an epic item from the store in 2 weeks. Back home after a productive day, the caring older brother greeted his sibling, creating the atmosphere of a normal evening. The curious junior immediately inquired about the results of the supposed date, not hiding his brotherly interest in the details. The surprised older brother didn't immediately understand the question, so the persistent junior clarified that he was asking about the girl mentioned earlier. Deftly changing the subject, the tactful brother reported that he had ordered black bean noodles, successfully avoiding further questioning. The generous man offered to choose something better, but the unassuming younger brother assured him of his complete satisfaction with the chosen dish. The strategist empathized with his brother's frugal tastes, remembering the recent time when they had literally been forced to eat scraps. He thought briefly about his cryptocurrency holdings, which had reached a staggering $15 million, and planned to liquidate them before the impending market collapse. The prudent young man was also aware of the importance of obtaining his driver's license before turning his attention to other tasks. Heading to take the theoretical part of the exam, the determined young man was focused on securing the necessary document. Mentally chuckling at having taken the test multiple times in different cycles, the experienced examinee planned to finish the task quickly. After passing the test at lightning speed, the astonished employee could not hide his surprise at the young man's extraordinary pace and confidence. Puzzled workers were perplexed as they watched the hasty departure of a candidate who had completed the test at a record pace. A confident young man thought the outcome was obvious, noting that even 4 days to get his license was a lot given his immense driving experience. Philosophically pondering, the pensive man tried to conceptualize his true age within the time loop, amazed at the sheer length of his existence. After receiving his license, the guy immediately ordered a red supercar, the choice of which was easy due to his familiarity with it in previous cycles. The employee of the car dealership confirmed the order with a delivery time of 1 month, pleasing the future owner with a specific time frame. The car dealer bowed low, thanking the wealthy customer for his impeccable taste in selecting such a high-end automobile. Exactly 2 weeks passed, and the astute investor sold his entire stash of Bitcoin at the absolute peak of its market value. By timing the exit perfectly, he successfully sidestepped the catastrophic collapse that wiped out the portfolios of countless others. Back at home, the younger brother noticed the strange, manic joy radiating from his sibling and curiously inquired about the cause. The excited older brother revealed that he had just liquidated his entire digital asset holding, securing a massive financial victory. When asked about the final proceeds, the satisfied man announced a staggering total of $300 billion, a figure that shattered all previous expectations. The teenager stood frozen in shock, his eyes widening as he struggled to process the sheer magnitude of the wealth his brother had generated. He vividly recalled that their recent lottery win had only yielded $60 million, making this new fortune feel like an impossible dream. The boy admitted that he had desperately tried to talk his brother out of buying Bitcoin just 1 month prior. He expressed genuine relief that his sibling had ignored that advice, as it paved the way for their current, newfound prosperity. The experienced strategist noted that in his previous cycles of life, he had never managed to accumulate more than $280 billion. He emphasized that the current result was an absolute anomaly, representing the most successful investment outcome he had ever achieved. The younger brother asked if the sale had occurred right before the market plummeted, and the elder confirmed his shrewd timing with a nod. The teenager looked at his brother with deep admiration, realizing that he possessed an uncanny, almost supernatural ability to predict market shifts. After acknowledging the praise, the visionary investor announced his next move, intending to pour the entire sum into the stock market. The concerned younger brother felt a jolt of alarm, remembering his sibling's relative inexperience with complex equity trading. He voiced his fear that the family might lose everything they had just worked so hard to accumulate. The self-proclaimed Black Scythe offered a calm reassurance, citing his prophetic dreams as proof that they would avoid any investment pitfalls. The trusting boy felt his anxiety melt away, choosing to place his faith in his brother's mysterious and infallible intuition. The elder man did not blame the youth for his initial distrust, understanding that his foresight was a secret advantage no mortal could comprehend. He knew that the company he chose was no random gamble, but a firm he had tracked across multiple timelines. The strategist identified the target as the Heavenly Demon Consulting Corporation, currently ranked 85th under Jen Lockek. He reasoned that investing in this specific firm guaranteed a massive return, as he knew with certainty that its rise was inevitable. After finalizing the investment, the observant elder heard his brother whispering a quiet prayer of gratitude for his decisive financial leadership. The younger boy sat close by, pleading with higher powers to ensure that his brother's prophetic visions remained true and prosperous. The purposeful reaper watched his sibling, feeling a surge of protective concern for their shared future and well-being. He turned his focus toward the game, realizing that the coming midnight would mark the culmination of his item accumulation. The experienced player reflected on the game's simple mechanics, where gold acted as the ultimate key to unlocking superior skills and equipment. He knew a specific necklace was about to arrive in the shop, one that would significantly boost both his intelligence and his attack speed. Armed with a 50% off coupon, the strategist planned to secure the item while keeping his remaining gold reserves intact. His original plan involved spending the leftover currency on armor, viewing it as a mandatory reinforcement for the upcoming trials. However, he realized that by grinding for an additional 6,000 gold, he could afford a general skill far more valuable than any physical protection. The young man set his sights on that target, knowing it was the final piece of his optimal character build. Time ticked forward relentlessly until it reached March 1st, 2023, the day humanity would once again face the deadly game. The participants felt a sudden, sickening lurch as their surroundings shifted, transporting them from the real world into the game's domain. Instead of the familiar forest, they found themselves standing amidst the haunting ruins of a desolate, forgotten village. The players surveyed the crumbling architecture, noting the ancient defensive walls that suggested the settlement once held significant strategic value. In the center of the ruins sat an ominous stone, drawing the curious gazes of everyone present as they wondered about its function. The experienced Reaper recognized the terrain immediately, while the other participants shifted nervously in the face of the unknown. Among the crowd, a man named Joe Junick stood with a calm, arrogant confidence that stood in stark contrast to the fear of the newcomers. Careful players whispered to one another, identifying him as the regional representative and a man known for his ruthless documentary on life. Rumors circulated that the mobster had coerced the other survivors into voting for him, threatening anyone who dared to dissent. When a few cautious participants called for silence, the cocky spokesperson dismissed them, noting that his submission skill had a limit of 10 uses. The irritated leader began to shout, demanding absolute silence from the group with an aggressive, booming voice. Bold participants criticized his crude behavior, pointing out that such hot-headedness was a liability in such a dangerous environment. The enraged mobster demanded that his critics reveal themselves, pushing the group toward conflict before the first wave of monsters even arrived. Joe Junick expressed his deep displeasure at the predictability of the situation, snarling that the winged creature did not respect his authority. Suddenly, a random participant stepped forward and bowed deeply to the regional representative, leaving the entire crowd in a state of bewilderment. Hangin Min's unexpected display of subservience caused the surrounding people to murmur in confusion. The defiant young man explained his actions by citing the gangster's status, claiming that a man of such power deserved total respect. The Life documentary asked the boy about his origins, and Yun Min replied that he was merely a youth dreaming of becoming a career criminal. Even to a hardened man like the mobster, such a dream sounded deranged, and he viewed the boy as a pathetic scumbag. The enthusiastic fan declared the representative as his personal role model, confessing a long-held desire to join the infamous gang. The stunned mobster struggled to find words, caught off guard by such an intense and unexpected display of devotion from a stranger. The determined admirer solemnly vowed to honor, obey, and serve his idol until the end of his days. The surprised gangster admitted that while he had seen many twisted people, he had never encountered a madman quite like this. Embarrassed by the public display, the representative ordered the boy to rise from his knees and stop making a scene. Joe Junick asked if the young man had vision or hearing problems, reminding him of his own notorious reputation among the contestants. The fanatical Yun Min declared that he did not care about the opinions of others, emphasizing his sincere, unwavering respect for his idol. The persistent youth begged to be accepted, claiming that serving under the mobster was his greatest goal in life. Impressed by such bizarre persistence, the man finally agreed to accept the devotee, showing a rare moment of condescension toward a newcomer. The enthusiastic boy thanked his new boss with unrestrained joy, grateful for the honor and the trust he had been granted. The observers watched in horror, considering the entire spectacle to be a sign of absolute crumbling sanity. The bewildered players questioned the motives behind such worship, viewing Yun Min's behavior as a clear sign of mental instability. The observant Ryu Ming watched the scene unfold, noting that everything was proceeding exactly according to the familiar scenario. He felt a sense of satisfaction, confident that his plan remained on schedule as the celestial entity finally descended from the sky. The angel appeared before them, preparing to explain the rules of this new, more lethal round of the game. The creature noted the decrease in total participants, pointing to the hidden losses incurred during the previous challenge. The players looked at one another in confusion, believing that everyone had survived the last round based on their own information. Puzzled, they frantically checked their status screens, hoping to uncover the truth behind the angel's grim announcement. The mysterious messenger suggested that players did not necessarily die just because they left the game, hinting at a darker reality that persisted in the real world. Outside the game, alarmed survivors began to scream for an update on the official count, gripped by a sudden cold panic. The data revealed only 1,225 survivors, a number far lower than anyone had anticipated. Incredulous, the players demanded to know if the angel had made a calculation error, refusing to accept such a drastic reduction. The heavenly messenger rejected the possibility of any mistakes, confirming the cold, hard accuracy of the statistics. The winged creature reminded them of the cardinal rule, which dictated that only half of the participants could survive each round. The angel explained the logic, noting that because the previous round had unlimited seats, it was necessary to trim the ranks to a quarter of the total. The divine messenger urged them to accept the justice of the process, despite the inherent cruelty of the survival game. The entity claimed that reaching the top 25% was not a difficult task, downplaying the horrors that awaited them. The angel explained the mechanics. Every half hour, monsters would emerge from the gates to attack the central village stone. The informant specified that there would be 4 waves in total, requiring absolute concentration and perfect teamwork from the survivors. The divine creature emphasized the importance of defending the stone, promising additional rewards for those who held the line for 4 hours. The messenger warned of strict punishment for failure, creating a dual pressure that forced the participants to cooperate. Finally, the angel explained the ranking system, which would reward those who killed the most monsters while determining the fate of the survivors. The divine essence noted that the number of opponents would be significantly higher than usual, making the task nearly impossible. The angel finished by clarifying that the monsters would only possess a third of their normal strength, offering a small, hollow comfort to the desperate crowd. The heavenly messenger suddenly recalled an important detail, drawing the attention of every participant with an unexpected and chilling warning. The winged creature reminded the crowd that the regional representative known as the Life Documentary held special rights in this new challenge. The angel explained that Jo Jun-sik could exercise commander authority, but it then posed a grim question regarding the consequences of that leader's death. The worried representative tensed at the mention of his own demise, clearly perplexed as to why the entity would highlight such a morbid possibility. The divine messenger revealed that the leader's seat would remain empty if he were killed by monsters or through a fatal accident. The angel then asked a provocative question about what might happen if a representative were killed by another player, creating an atmosphere of intense anticipation. In such a case, the assassin would automatically become the new regional representative, and instantly gain 10 uses of the commander's authority. The celestial messenger announced the end of the briefing, leaving the stunned players to process the lethal shift in the game's power dynamics. The monsters would appear in exactly 10 minutes at 3 in the morning, and the entity urged the survivors to prioritize teamwork for their survival. The winged creature sneered, adding that it lacked any confidence in the players' ability to handle the task, effectively provoking them with its open doubt. A shocked Jo Jun-sik realized the catastrophic nature of his situation, seeing how the shifting rules of the game had turned against him in an instant. The enraged representative began to swear loudly, accusing the angel of deliberately ruining his plans while failing to hide his growing despair. The alarmed mobster slowly turned his head to assess the surroundings behind him, anticipating immediate danger from the other participants. A tense look caught the faces of the people in the crowd who were clearly against him and ready to attack to seize power for themselves. An infuriated Jo Jun-sik aggressively threatened the would-be attackers, calling them freaks and trying to intimidate them despite the mounting danger. Savvy players scoffed at the limitations of his authority, noting he only had 10 uses left and suggesting that he be replaced by someone more worthy. The ambitious participants began shouting out their own superiority, each believing himself to be the best candidate for the role of regional spokesperson. The alarmed players noticed another figure moving through the throng, slowly and cautiously turning around to examine the unexpected participant in the situation. The resolute Ryu Min looked exceptionally determined, standing out as the only player with an already activated class among those gathered. The confident Reaper slowly made his way toward the chairman of the region, causing the startled Jo Jun-sik to ask a perplexed question about his intentions. The calm young man reassured the representative, explaining his desire to simply speak without showing any aggressive intentions as he approached. The contrivedly brave Jo Jun-sik denied feeling any fear, demanding an immediate explanation of the visitor's purpose while masking his anxiety behind a wall of rudeness. The cocky mobster insisted he felt no dread even when the mysterious man mentioned he had a business proposition that might intrigue him. The insightful Ryu Min noted the ambiguity and complexity of the representative's position, demonstrating a deep understanding of the critical point. Unexpectedly, the Black Scythe offered his personal defense throughout the round, surprising everyone present with his sudden offer of assistance. The stunned chairman asked for clarification, to which the strategic Reaper explained his willingness to guard and escort him, guaranteeing his safety. The shocked players heard this and fell into confusion, failing to understand the Reaper's true motives or his strange desire to protect a mobster. The bewildered participants realized the futility of trying to eliminate a representative who now had a powerful protector like Ryu Min. The cautious regional chairman understood there was a price to pay, so he bluntly asked about the reward required for such a generous offer. The nonchalant Ryu Min sighed, assuring the leader that his demands were completely insignificant, successfully putting the man's vigilance to sleep with feigned modesty. The cunning Reaper then revealed his only condition, which was complete obedience to all his orders, demonstrating the true purpose of his magnanimous offer. The shocked mobster was internally outraged, realizing that the young man was actually offering him a subordinate role that felt humiliating for a gang leader. The suspicious representative inquired as to the reasons for such demands, but he received only an evasive reply stating that the motives could not be disclosed yet. The bewildered Jo Jun-sik pondered the ridiculousness of the offer of total submission, finding it impossible to agree to such humiliating terms. The hesitant mobster recognized the unlikelihood of immediate aggression from the guy, considering whether he should temporarily accept the conditions for survival. An insistent Ryu Min began to exert psychological pressure, pointing out the impatient anticipation of everyone present and demanding an immediate decision. The hesitant representative began to mumble, finding it difficult to clearly formulate his answer under the heavy, judgmental stares of the surrounding players. The stubborn leader finally rejected the offer, a move that did not surprise the strategists who had already foreseen such an outcome. Astonished observers considered the refusal an incomprehensibly stupid decision, realizing it would inevitably trigger the desire of many players to eliminate the representative. Perplexed participants regarded the man's behavior as the result of excessive pride or extreme stupidity, failing to understand the logic behind his flat refusal. A satisfied Ryu Min noted the consistency of events with the past scenario, realizing the need to complete the plan he had started without deviation. The outwardly indifferent Reaper agreed to the decision, promising not to pester the man further and giving the impression that he had lost interest in the representative's fate. The cold-blooded young man emphasized his complete indifference to the mobster's life or death, deliberately saying these words loud enough for others to hear. The excited players heard this and began to incite each other, believing the Black Scythe's words to be tacit permission for a massacre of the hated representative. A worried Jo Jun-sik tensely looked around, realizing the difficulty of his situation and briefly considering whether he should have agreed to the Reaper's proposal. An unexpected notification of the first wave approaching diverted the players' attention, urging them to prepare to defend the village stone at all costs. The system alerted them that a second wave of monsters would appear in half an hour, with the difficulty scaling based on the number of survivors. The distraught representative realized the impossibility of fighting alongside people who wanted him dead, fearing he would be stabbed in the back at any moment. The arrogant mobster believed that the quest was doable alone, overestimating his own strength in the face of the impending danger. A puzzled Jo Jun-sik suddenly noticed the Black Scythe walking away, leaving the defensive perimeter to head toward the town alone. Interested in the loner's actions at such a critical moment, the curious chairman decided to follow the mysterious fellow, driven by deep suspicion. The intrigued mobster was perplexed at the intentions of a man heading into town instead of preparing for the defense with the rest of the group. Suddenly the gate opened fully, marking the beginning of the first wave of attack and drawing the attention of all involved to the impending threat. The system informed the players of the current status, showing that 4,900 people were facing the danger, creating a numerical superiority for the monsters. An information message warned that 10,000 weakened goblins were bursting through the gate toward the protected stone. The peculiarity of the round made the goblins 3 times weaker than usual, but the chairman still chose to hide and watch the events from a distance. The skeptical mobster pondered the mysterious fellow's plan, doubting the ability of a single loner to withstand such a flood of goblins. The observer noted that the gate allowed at least a dozen creatures to pass through at a time, making it nearly impossible for a single defense to hold. The sneering Jo Jun-sik was perplexed by the young man's self-confidence, finding it laughable that he thought he could handle 10 opponents at once. The disdainful mobster mentally called the black scythe a creep, convinced that the man was merely bragging and exaggerating his own fighting abilities. Creepy monsters in huge numbers began to flood the ancient village territory, posing a real threat to the center stone. The focused Ryu Min took a fighting stance, preparing to strike the first blow to the approaching monsters with unperturbed determination. Masterfully wielding a huge scythe, the skillful Reaper chopped down several monsters in one motion, demonstrating exceptional fighting prowess. The experienced strategist's determined gaze betrayed an unwavering confidence in winning this round again, despite the overwhelming odds. The flow of goblins did not dry up, as the destroyed monsters were immediately followed by new ones, creating the impression of an endless wave. The enraged goblins rushed straight toward the guy, displaying animalistic fury in massive numbers and giving the impression of imminent danger. The unperturbed Reaper once again chopped down the attackers with his huge scythe, displaying outstanding weaponry and combat prowess. The determined young man took a step forward and prepared to continue the fight, his most serious gaze betraying complete concentration. The astonished representative of the region watched this spectacle, perplexed at the real strength of the black scythe, which far exceeded his expectations. The pensive mobster pondered whether all players would become so strong upon reaching level 16, comparing his own skills to the outstanding warrior. Realizing the criticality of the moment, Jo Jun-sik decided the time for observation was over, and he too needed to actively participate in the battle. The concerned representative thought of the other players helping to repel the goblins and defend the center stone of the village. A sympathetic mobster noted the difficulties of the fighting men, some of whom had already fallen in an unequal battle that required maximum effort. Motivated by a sudden sense of duty, Jo Jun-sik realized the need to join in the destruction of the goblins. Overcoming his caution, the determined spokesman walked out toward the humans and approached one of the monsters, provoking it to attack with his defiant demeanor. The experienced fighter easily dealt with the attacking goblin, demonstrating his skills and confirming his reputation as a dangerous opponent. Suddenly the mobster abruptly turned around with a dazed and frightened expression, sensing the approach of an unexpected danger. The nimble representative easily dealt with the goblin that had crept up from behind, using his combat training to eliminate the threat. The cocky fighter noted the effectiveness of his detection ability in helping him anticipate the trajectory of his opponents. Suddenly a strange energy swept near his eye, catching the tip of his ear and warning him of a new, more serious threat. A startled Jo Jun-sik realized that an arrow had been shot at him, and he anxiously looked around for the mysterious assailant. The analytical representative realized that the shooter was not a goblin, as he had never met goblin archers before, and he immediately suspected treachery. Suddenly the mobster noticed a player approaching from the side who then impaled him with a spear in a sudden, treacherous attack. The resilient Jo Jun-sik, pulling the weapon out of his own body, called his attacker an idiot, showing incredible stamina even while mortally wounded. The brave representative, despite a serious injury, was ready to fight back. The experienced mobster drove his knife into the attacker with a lightning-fast motion, easily dispatching the man who had underestimated him. The enraged regional representative charged at the traitor, his voice thick with threats and his eyes burning with the fury of a man betrayed. He had never displayed such intense, murderous determination, reflecting the sheer desperation of a leader fighting for his life during a critical battle. A concerned Zhou Junsik scanned the area and spotted the archer drawing his bow, instantly identifying the second threat to his survival. The savvy mobster swung the spear he had salvaged from his earlier victim, aiming to eliminate the long-range foe with one precise, lethal throw. The terrified archer desperately struggled to aim, hoping to defend himself against the onslaught of the enraged regional representative. All of the archer's frantic attempts at defense proved futile against the incoming projectile. The spear tore through the air and pierced the archer's skull, instantly extinguishing the life of the second hapless traitor. A frustrated Zhou Junsik realized with bitter clarity that the other players posed a far greater danger to him than the monsters did. Cursing his unwanted status as the region's representative, the doomed mobster lamented the unfortunate role that had placed a target on his back. He daydreamed of offloading this perilous burden onto any willing soul who might desire the prestige of such a title. A proud man bound by his own rigid principles, he vowed that he would never bend or submit to anyone, even if it cost him his life. The bewildered representative searched for a safe path to hunt monsters without the constant threat of treacherous, backstabbing players. The attentive Zhou Junsik noticed a player known as Black Dragon, who ranked among the top 3 strongest competitors in their entire region. The determined mobster concluded that this powerful individual could serve as his only viable ally in the current chaotic situation. The purposeful representative approached the strong player, intent on initiating a deal for their mutual protection and benefit. The overbearing Zhou Junsik leveled his dagger at Black Dragon and ordered the man to provide personal protection for the regional chairman. Meanwhile, the tireless Ryu Min continued his relentless assault against the seemingly endless stream of encroaching monsters. Having successfully annihilated 500 goblins, the Curious Reaper opened his status window and noted the acquisition of 2,000 gold coins. The calculating strategist realized that at his current pace, he could easily accumulate 20,000 gold for the second wave of monster attacks. The ambitious young man decided to hoard even more gold during this round to purchase 2 common skills, including the Truth of the Heart's Thoughts. While the player remained preoccupied with his status, the tireless goblins attempted to sneak up on him through the shadows. The attentive Ryu Min heard the faint rustle of their approach and instantly spun around to face the encroaching opponents. The skilled Reaper swung his deadly scythe in a wide arc, preparing to wipe out the sneaking foes with a single, devastating blow. The remaining goblins froze in sheer confusion as they watched their fellows fall beneath the warrior's blade before they could even launch an attack. A mocking Ryu Min turned toward the paralyzed monsters, noting their indecision and promising to initiate the slaughter himself without waiting for their move. The tense players gathered near the village's main stone suddenly heard a strange, humming sound that captured everyone's immediate attention. The astonished participants watched as the goblins began to dissolve into thin air right before their eyes, as if vanishing by some unseen magic. Amazed players noted that the monsters crumbled into nothingness, losing the very material form of their existence. The system announced that the first wave had officially concluded. Nearly 4,000 players had survived the initial onslaught, confirming that significant losses had occurred among the participants. A system notification informed the survivors of a 500 gold coin reward, providing them with additional motivation to continue the fight. The loss of 1,000 participants, despite the inherent weakness of the goblins, caused genuine regret among the survivors who understood the true price of victory. An attentive Ryu Min scanned the battlefield, attempting to locate the region's representative among the survivors of the first wave. The strategically minded Reaper, noticing that Zhou Junsik had survived, realized the mounting difficulty of navigating this specific turn of events. The wounded representative of the region had suffered far more from player betrayal than from the actual monster attacks, further complicating his dire situation. The enraged mobster felt a surge of fury, realizing that the traitor had ignored the goblins entirely just to stalk him and wait for an opening. Suddenly another aggressive player appeared from the shadows behind him, intending to strike the regional representative with a concealed knife. Vigilant bodyguards reacted instantly, intercepting the attacker and proving their effectiveness in protecting their embattled leader. A satisfied Zhou Junsik rejoiced at the presence of his loyal, dog-like subordinates. Realizing the importance of a commander's authority for survival in the upcoming waves, a concerned Yen Ming inquired about his boss's physical condition. The mobster remarked on the surprising loyalty of his subordinates, noting that they defended him even without the need for formal orders. The condition of the region's representative remained a matter of grave concern. An extensive bleeding wound severely hampered his ability to participate in any further confrontations. The heavy loss of blood cast doubt on the leader's ability to survive the remainder of this deadly, grueling ordeal. In such a battered state, the stubborn Jo Jun-sik recognized the criticality of his situation, yet remained determined to survive against all odds. The mobster clung to life, ready to exploit any opportunity for survival that fate might offer him in this dangerous world. Suddenly every person present heard an unusual rhythmic sound, and synchronously turned toward its source. Alarmed by the arrival of a new threat, the second wave of the test officially began. The system deployed 8,000 weakened goblins, a number that far exceeded the count of the first wave. The information message once again wished all participants good luck in their struggle for survival. Although the difficulty of the task had increased significantly, the confident Ryu Min knew he did not require the favor of luck. He remained absolutely certain of his ability to handle the entire new wave entirely on his own. With a virtuoso display of weapon mastery, the talented Reaper effortlessly mowed down enemies, demonstrating an incredible level of combat skill. For the experienced warrior, the act of destroying his opponents seemed so trivial that it failed to bring him any real satisfaction. A massive number of goblins and similar creatures fell to the lone fighter who required no support from his fellow players. The extremely effective strategist reached level 20, finally unlocking long-awaited access to the important item combo feature. The satisfied Reaper rejoiced at the achievement he had sought for so long, gaining the ability to craft unique items unavailable in any normal store. Impressive improvements included raising his seal damage to 120 and acquiring the Knight of Death skill, which complemented his class perfectly. New groups of goblins burst through the gate, confidently charging toward the lad, entirely unaware of the lethal danger that awaited them. A sneering Ryu Min greeted the approaching monsters, noting that their arrival provided a perfect test for the skill he had just mastered. By activating the Knight of Death, the mighty Reaper caused great consternation among the goblins, disorienting them before his decisive attack. With a lightning-fast movement, the skilled warrior severed the heads of his opponents, leaving them no chance to resist or defend themselves. The expert scythe master cut through his enemies, truly embodying the image of a reaper harvesting a deadly crop upon the battlefield. The ruthless fighter left the monsters no hope of survival, methodically destroying every enemy that crossed his path. The terrified goblins seemed to regret their encounter with a ruthless warrior who had turned their advance into a hopeless slaughter. In a matter of seconds, the master destroyed an astonishing number of creatures, demonstrating incredible efficiency in his combat style. After successfully repelling the second wave, the system reported 3,300 survivors and 600 deaths, prompting the Reaper to consider his next skill acquisition. The strategically minded Ryu Min decided to be the first to purchase the presence detection skill from the store, further enhancing his tactical capabilities. His newly acquired skill allowed him to detect targets within a 30-meter radius, though only goblins and the corpses of fallen fighters appeared around him. As the third wave began, the indefatigable master continued to chop down the attacking monsters with ease, displaying incredible stamina. The third wave of the challenge was completed successfully as the remaining players worked together to repel the attack while approaching the final challenge. For the fourth and decisive wave, only 3,000 surviving players remained, each doing their best to repel the final monster attack. Concerned players felt the tension rising, realizing the increased difficulty of each wave and fearing the potential failure of the entire confrontation. The wounded representative of the region busily calculated the remaining time. If he could last another hour, he could guarantee his survival for this round. A surprised Jo Jun-sik reflected on the loyalty of the defenders who continued to protect him even after exhausting all his commander orders. The system announced the fifth wave, with the number of monsters reaching an impressive 10,000 creatures, surpassing all previous attacks. Hyena-like monster animals posed a serious threat, but the ambitious spokesman saw an opportunity to set a new record. The recognition-hungry mobster dreamed of growing in power, planning to destroy everyone who had looked down on him or rejected his authority. The The vigilant leader suddenly heard strange screams and turned around, attempting to identify the source of the noise amidst the chaos of battle. The chairman's staunch defenders had come under attack by other players, revealing the instability of the situation and the growing opposition. Rebellious players united against the hated representative, intent on destroying him despite the common, overwhelming threat of the monsters. A desperate Jo Jun-sik ordered his bodyguards to stand until the end, protecting him at the cost of their own lives during this critical moment. The underpowered guards were easily killed by the rebellious players, demonstrating the vast mismatch between their skills and the severity of the threat. An anxious representative realized the critical decline in the number of dedicated advocates who could keep him safe from the aggressive participants. Realizing the futility of further resistance, the sober-minded mobster began a hasty retreat. He understood the priority of survival over his own pride, even as the enraged pursuers loudly demanded to catch and capture the fleeing leader. They did not want to miss the opportunity to finally get rid of the hated representative. The trapped man realized that he only needed to survive one more wave to clear the round. Focusing on his main task while backing away, the panting representative saw the black braid in front of him, taking this encounter as a possible lifeline. A desperate Jo Jun-sik turned to the man, agreeing to his offer in exchange for protection and completely reversing his previous stance. The begging mobster repeated his agreement to the proposal, showing a sincere willingness to submit to the black braid for the sake of his salvation. The cold-blooded reaper replied in a surprisingly icy tone, firmly refusing the representative despite his pleas. The reaper stood motionless, his dark gaze fixed upon the desperate mobster who begged for salvation. The indifferent young man reminded the petitioner of his earlier refusal, suggesting that every person should face their own consequences. The shocked representative scrambled to recall his previous arrogance, while the calculating strategist explained the utter uselessness of a servant who lacked the formal authority of a commander. A sudden crushing realization dawned upon the mobster, who cursed his own short-sightedness and pride. The surrounding pursuers jeered, delighted that the legendary black scythe had rejected the desperate plea of the region's leader. Fanatical players with crazed eyes declared that the doomed man had reached his inevitable end, noting the complete absence of loyal defenders to shield him. The pressure mounted, and the determined representative adopted a final, defiant stance, promising to drag at least one attacker into the grave with him. Unexpectedly, the treacherous Yenming stepped forward, offering his assistance and providing the illusion of genuine support. The overjoyed mobster expressed profound relief, convinced that he could still rely on his only remaining loyal subordinate to turn the tide. Without warning, the young bandit betrayed his master, striking with brutal force and shocking the onlookers with the suddenness of the attack. The defeated representative collapsed to the ground, his body failing under the relentless barrage of blows from the one person he trusted. The mortally wounded man felt his vitality fading, his life draining away under the hail of merciless strikes from his former ally. The cynical Yenming leaned over the dying man, promising a quick and painless death as a twisted gesture of respect. The contemptuous victim gathered his final reserves of strength, labeling his attacker a true freak and a spineless traitor. Indifferent to the insults, the young man ignored the dying words, continuing his assault with the cold precision of a seasoned assassin. Thanks to his elevated strength, the bandit's fists possessed enough power to turn the victim's face into an unrecognizable mass of flesh. The dying representative realized the bitter irony of his demise, lamenting his failure to foresee the betrayal of such a pathetic creature. The determined assassin rose to his feet and delivered one final crushing blow, completing the brutal carnage he had initiated. The power of the regional representative transferred to Yenming, who stood in the center of the chaos and rejoiced in his new status. The ambitious new leader pondered the perks of his position, imagining the famous actresses and elite status he could now claim. Anticipating total control, the young man planned to use the commander's authority to satisfy his own selfish desires and goals. The hypocritical murderer briefly hoped the man he had killed would not hold a grudge in the afterlife, conveniently justifying his actions as a necessity for the greater good. Looking around, the lad felt a momentary flicker of shame, which stood in stark contrast to the pride he felt regarding his recent triumph. Addressing the surrounding players, the aspiring leader prepared to deliver a speech to demonstrate his newfound superiority. The onlookers shuddered at the sight, viewing Yen Ming as a dangerous freak capable of killing with his bare hands. The cocky representative questioned the crowd about their reactions, oblivious to the fact that they were already being whipped into a frenzy to eliminate him. Outraged participants expressed their deep displeasure, considering it completely inappropriate for such a scoundrel to lead their region. The new representative pondered whether the disgruntled players would actually dare to attempt his removal. Despite the mounting hostility, the arrogant Yen Ming remained certain that his assassination was impossible, severely underestimating the collective mood of the crowd. Suddenly, the newly minted representative turned his attention toward the black scythe, seeking the support of the strongest player on the battlefield. A triumphant Yen Ming displayed the system message confirming his status, hoping to convince the silent observer of his newfound worth. The calculating assassin expressed his willingness to accept the previous offer, promising complete submission in exchange for the Reaper's protection. The confident spokesman believed that possessing the commander's authority would finally secure the support he desperately needed. The ruthless Ryu Min demanded that the new leader kneel down and beg for that protection, asserting his absolute superiority over the petitioner. The shocked representative recalled his commander's authority, arguing that it should be enough to warrant an equal alliance between them. The unperturbed Reaper pointed out that it was Yen Ming himself who required protection, shattering the final illusions about the leader's value. The unyielding Ryu Min repeated his demand, insisting that the representative kneel if he truly wished to receive patronage. Realizing the severity of his situation, Yen Ming understood that he was trapped between the angry mob and the terrifying strength of the Reaper. The broken man knelt down, offering himself as a servant and begging for help, having completely abandoned his pride in the face of certain death. Tired of the repetitive cycle, the Reaper considered the potential usefulness of this new representative. Unlike the previous bandit, the pragmatic strategist accepted the offer, recognizing the value of a subordinate who could serve his long-term goals. The Reaper ordered the new servant to stop his pathetic groveling, expressing visible disgust at the sight of the kneeling man. The majestic warrior walked past his new servant, maintaining total control over the situation through his cold and careless demeanor. The shrewd Reaper overheard the surrounding players discussing a final conflict, unaware that they were being manipulated by his presence. Prudent participants acknowledged the invincibility of the black scythe, knowing he could easily destroy anyone who dared to confront him. Ryu Min suddenly intervened, drawing the attention of everyone with a calm and chilling address. The prudent Reaper presented two options, the first of which was to simply ignore the representative and focus on the monsters. The cold-blooded warrior offered a second option, which was death at his own hands, leaving the participants with the illusion of choosing between retreat and survival. He recommended the first option, noting that he did not consider anyone who would raise a weapon against him to be a human being. The shocked players swallowed their tongues, paralyzed by the fear of the warrior who displayed such overwhelming power. The pale participants turned around in silence, hastily agreeing to leave without further conflict, preferring life to meaningless heroics. The astonished Yen Ming watched as the entire crowd retreated, witnessing the absolute authority of the Reaper. The calculating representative realized the value of his patron, acknowledging him as an intimidating adversary but a necessary ally. The tense situation drew to a close, and the players returned to the task of defending the village. United by their common goal, the participants prepared to repel the fifth and final wave of monsters, restoring order to the chaos. A pensive Ryu Min felt a strange melancholy, disappointed by the trivial conclusion of the local conflict. The bewildered Yen Ming turned to his new master, waiting for further instructions. The treacherous Reaper ordered his subordinate to use the commander's authority to destroy the sacred relic, shocking the listener into silence. The representative was barely aware of the order, realizing that breaking the crystal was an incredibly dangerous action with unpredictable consequences. A worried Yen Ming recalled the angel's warning regarding severe penalties, feeling the weight of the moral conflict. The resisting representative worried that he would lose the ability to use his authority to subdue the actress he had long dreamed of. The patient Reaper refused to listen to the objections, making the absolute nature of his order clear. The humbled representative realized he had no choice but to follow the command. The cunning Ryu Min pointed out specific players to use the authority on, naming Little Chili Pepper and Shimong Yu. The servant realized that the Reaper had deliberately targeted his friends, creating a cruel moral dilemma. A depressed Yenming approached his friends, apologizing for the impending action while citing the Reaper's order as an unavoidable necessity. The forced representative activated his authority, directing it at his friends and ordering them to destroy the sacred relic. All players received a shocking notification of the incident, causing extreme confusion among the trial participants. The defenders turned around and discovered the partially destroyed relic, unable to believe their eyes in the face of such a sacrilegious act. Outraged players began shouting for an immediate halt, realizing the catastrophic consequences for everyone present. Panicked participants warned of imminent fines, calling for the mad performers to be stopped at any cost. Desperate players rushed toward the destroyers, trying to physically pull them away from the artifact. All attempts to stop the possessed players proved futile, and the relic shattered into small fragments. The system announced a penalty, summoning a representative of divine retribution for 30 minutes. A satisfied Ryu Min rejoiced inwardly, knowing everything had proceeded exactly according to his strategic design. Calculating players noted the 3,000 gold reward for survival, finding the compensation acceptable despite the failed mission. The strategic Reaper was rewarded even more highly than the defense against the fifth wave, confirming the brilliance of using a pawn to cause the destruction. The cunning Ryu Min did not destroy the relic himself, knowing the penalty would be distributed to the direct perpetrators. The punished traitors stared in horror as their status windows displayed an irreversible 50% reduction in all core statistics. The realization dawned on them that their master's grand design had effectively neutralized their combat potential in a single stroke. Outraged friends turned their aggression toward Yenming, hurling insults and labeling the representative a pathetic freak. The confused representative offered stumbling apologies, never having anticipated that the divine penalty would bleed over to affect his own allies. A secondary consequence manifested as the region's representative suffered a massive leadership debuff for his failure to protect the sacred relic. The new leader's personal characteristics plummeted by half, stripping away every tactical advantage he previously held over the common players. A furious Yenming paced in frustration while a satisfied Ryu Min watched from the shadows, celebrating the flawless execution of his devious plan. The prudent strategist began his final preparations for the inevitable appearance of the representative of divine retribution. Leaving absolutely nothing to chance, the experienced Reaper invested his surplus gold into common items to bolster his stats against the coming threat. The methodical player placed his skeleton necklace into a special equipment slot, already visualizing the necessary magic crystal upgrade. After ensuring his gear was optimized, the focused Ryu Min combined the necklace with the crystal to push its base stats higher. The merging process proved successful, and the skeleton necklace granted an additional point to all attributes, enhancing the wearer's combat potential. The erudite warrior understood that each piece of equipment could host only one magic crystal, so he carefully managed his limited resources. The prudent Ryu Min continued to refine every available item, maximizing his overall combat effectiveness before the trial reached its climax. The rational strategist acknowledged the modest impact of low-rank crystals, yet he considered any marginal improvement superior to remaining static. Strange phenomena began to ripple across the main square, causing the remaining players to tense in anticipation of the divine entity. The anxious participants realized their primary task was to survive for 30 minutes, while avoiding direct contact with the celestial enemy. Optimistic players clung to the hope of survival through evasion and clever maneuvering, severely underestimating the true might of the descending foe. The experienced Ryu Min understood that escaping a representative of divine retribution would be impossible without possessing exceptional statistics. Preparing for the inevitable clash, the calculating Reaper recalled that even with his superior stats, the confrontation would remain incredibly difficult. Assessing the actual odds, the determined lad intended to engage the enemy directly, expecting the maximum reward for slaying such a powerful creature. The confident strategist remained acutely aware of his unique title, the First Angel Killer, which effectively doubled his stats during combat against sacred beings. Analytical Ryu Min categorized the representative of divine retribution as a sacred entity, instantly activating his special title's passive bonus. When the angel-like creature finally descended, the inexperienced players naively rejoiced, mistaking the terrifying harbinger for a harmless spectacle. Short-sighted participants expressed visible relief, confessing their previous fears had been entirely unreasonable regarding such a beautiful adversary. The mesmerized players admired the intricate, glowing rod held by the sacred creature, remaining blissfully unaware of its destructive potential. The sacred being stepped forward with slow, majestic grace and raised its staff toward the heavens to manifest its true power. A powerful strike of the rod against the earth shook the entire surroundings, signaling the beginning of a severe test for the unprepared crowd. A vast, violet dome expanded rapidly from the point of impact, bathing the battlefield in an eerie, divine energy. The shocked players struggled to maintain their footing as they resisted the overwhelming pressure of the expanding barrier. The confused participants failed to grasp the nature of the phenomenon, assuming it was merely a standard limiting field for the upcoming battle. The system broadcast a notification, warning that as long as the caster maintained the skill, no player could exit the enclosed area. All trapped players watched in despair as their statistics were automatically slashed by 50%, creating a lethal obstacle to their survival. An attentive Ryu Min assessed the scale of the threat, noting that roughly 300 players were now trapped within the dome. The divine creature prepared to deliver another crushing blow, gathering swirling energy for a devastating attack against the defenseless mortals. The sacred rod began to emit countless streams of light, filling the interior of the dome with the lethal power of divine wrath. The experienced Ryu Min recognized the familiar scenario, observing events unfold exactly as they had in all of his previous playthroughs. The emitted energy coalesced into thousands of glowing daggers, raining down upon the unfortunate players trapped inside the barrier. Helpless participants found resistance impossible, as the sheer density of the energy projectiles made evasion a mathematical impossibility. The ruthless divine being displayed no signs of fatigue, maintaining its relentless barrage of destruction against the mortals. Imprisoned within the restrictive field, the players realized the practical impossibility of dodging the light arrows in such a confined space. Only through unconventional thinking and the use of unique skills could a player hope to survive this deadly, divine ordeal. The observant Ryu Min noted that the creature, entirely engrossed in the massacre, remained completely focused on the attack while ignoring its own defenses. The strategically minded Reaper realized that the moment the barrier faltered would provide the perfect opportunity for a surprise counterattack. The attentive youth noticed a small, flickering gap appearing in the barrier, creating his only chance for a successful breakthrough. The confident Ryu Min relied on his stealth, knowing the creature could not hear his approach amidst the chaos of the ongoing slaughter. The determined warrior executed a powerful leap, closing the 5-meter distance to his target while preparing to deliver a crushing blow. The focused Reaper calculated the trajectory and force of his impending strike, aiming for the most critical point on the divine form. The tactically minded fighter activated the seal of death on his opponent, setting the stage for the most effective attack possible. The experienced strategist understood the necessity of dealing critical damage with his very first strike, so he swung his scythe with maximum force. Absorbed by the massacre, the divine being had not anticipated an attack from within, leaving its back completely exposed to the surprise strike. The astute Ryu Min noticed the exact moment the creature realized the danger, but he knew it was already too late for the enemy to react. The satisfied Reaper saw his plan unfold flawlessly, granting him an immediate strategic advantage over the powerful celestial entity. The scythe's blade struck precisely at the godlike creature's eye, dealing massive critical damage to the most vulnerable point of its divine body. A piercing cry of agony echoed across the battlefield, testifying to the intense suffering of the wounded divine being. Thanks to the seal of death, the skillful Reaper monitored the enemy's health, noting that about 60% remained. Assessing the effectiveness of his first strike, the Reaper anticipated the creature would attempt to restore the restriction field. He planned to vanish into the shadows temporarily, waiting for the divine being to drop its guard once more. The enraged representative of divine retribution immediately channeled its staff to activate a new, shimmering restriction field. The experienced strategist knew that once the creature failed to detect its target, It would eventually cancel the field, creating another opening. The purposeful Ryu Min, having already deprived his opponent of one eye, prepared to continue his lethal plan without granting any respite. The tactically minded Reaper targeted the creature's second eye, aiming to completely strip the entity of its visual perception. The methodical warrior understood that with the loss of both eyes, the divine opponent would be rendered virtually helpless. Unable to react to the invisible threat, the wounded angel shrieked in maddening pain, its cries signaling the success of the Reaper's brutal tactics. The divine being activated the field again, forcing a 50% stat reduction, yet Ryu Min remained unperturbed by the futile gesture. The disoriented enemy blindly launched arrows in a desperate attempt to destroy its attacker, but every projectile missed its mark. The merciless Reaper dodged the chaotic attacks while casting the Knight of Death spell to further increase his combat advantage. The blinded angel failed to land a single strike, proving the total ineffectiveness of its desperate, sightless assault. A philosophical Ryu Min noted the superiority of darkness over light, invoking the laws of combat before delivering his next blow. The determined Reaper swung his scythe with calculated precision, aiming to end the drawn-out battle once and for all. The flawlessly executed blow knocked the blinded angel off its feet, proving the Reaper's absolute superiority over the divine opponent. The helpless creature struggled to rise, but without sight, its attempts at retaliation were easily sidestepped by the nimble warrior. The skilled fighter continued his methodical assault, carving into the divine body with each precise, devastating swing. With a powerful final movement, the strategically minded Reaper severed the wings of the celestial creature, grounding it permanently. The attentive Ryu Min noted the creature's health had plummeted to 10%, so he deliberately stopped his attacks to trigger the final phase. The calculating strategist retreated, knowing that the system would soon activate the passive skill unique to the representative of divine retribution. The system announced that the conditions for the final phase had been met, signaling the creature's last, desperate resistance. The patient Reaper counted down the seconds, waiting for the brief duration of the angel's final skill to expire. The calm strategist smiled as the countdown reached 0, marking the end of the invisibility effect and the return of the enemy's vulnerability. The creature stood exposed, making it an easy target for the Reaper to deliver the final crushing blow. A determined Ryu Min rushed forward, his scythe raised to complete his victorious, cold-blooded strategy. The ruthless Reaper swung his scythe with finality, severing the godlike creature's head from its shimmering shoulders. The epic confrontation reached its conclusion as the headless form dissolved into golden particles of light. A system notification chimed in the air, informing the victor that he had leveled up and earned 8,000 gold coins. The interface added a bonus of 4,000 gold for the successful destruction of the representative of divine retribution. The valiant Ryu Min watched as the prestigious title of God's retribution opponent materialized above his profile, signifying his exceptional combat prowess. Because this was the first kill of such a high-tier entity, the system granted him a rare reward of concentrated ether. The strategist knew that this substance was highly prized among experienced players for its necessity in crafting divine rank items. An additional rune of radiance shimmered into existence, automatically activating to enhance the combat potential of the brave warrior. The Reaper noted that upon reaching level 30, he would receive a permanent enhancement of 30 units to his intelligence and skill effectiveness. In the square below, the surviving players erupted into rapturous shouts, celebrating their narrow escape from certain death. Shocked viewers whispered amongst themselves, discussing how the man with the black braid had single-handedly accomplished the impossible task. They labeled him a true monster among men, marveling at the sheer gap in power between him and the average participant. The astonished angel hovered nearby, expressing sincere admiration for the incredible feat of slaying such a divine representative. For the first time since the game began, the celestial being admitted that it recognized humans as potentially worthy opponents. Showing unprecedented respect for a mortal, the intrigued angel offered to conduct a short interview regarding the warrior's true motives. The annoyed Ryu Min inwardly resented the stupidity of the question, finding the motive for survival entirely self-evident. He provided a simple, curt answer, but the incredulous angel questioned the selflessness of his act, hinting at hidden agendas. Impressed observers noted the unexpected modesty of the hero, having braced themselves for arrogance but finding only a man of iron will. A surprised Saren recognized the heroic first step Ryu Min had taken to save his companions, feeling holy amazement at such human altruism. The bewildered angel confessed the profound difficulty of understanding human norms, highlighting the vast divide between divine and mortal perception. The magnanimous creature praised all survivors for their resilience, showing a newfound, unexpected respect for the human will to live. The reminder angel issued a cold warning that future exclusions would be based strictly on overall performance metrics. A wave of tension swept through the crowd as participants realized the stakes of the upcoming rounds. Shocked players learned of Black Scythe's incredible achievement of killing 3,000 monsters, a number that seemed insane even to the veterans. The stealthy strategist understood the implications of his hidden enhancement, knowing the world would only grasp his true power when he topped the regional rankings. Ryu Min secured the top spot in the entire region once again, earning a rare mid-ranked ring selection ticket as his reward. The pragmatic Reaper chose the Ring of Resistance, prioritizing defense against status effects over raw offensive power. The experienced strategist pondered his next reward, ultimately declining the triple experience boost to prioritize immediate utility. Realizing that the purpose of the fourth round would likely shift away from simple monster culling, he opted for the gold reward instead. The angel's voice boomed across the arena, announcing the immediate exclusion of all players ranked below 1225. Panic erupted among the participants as those on the list realized their time had run out. The doomed players shouted in desperation, begging the system to reevaluate their contributions during the co-slaughter of the divine beast. The indifferent divine creature dismissed the losers as mere insects, showing absolute apathy toward their impending erasure. The ruthless angel announced that these losers were not only expelled from the game, but would be purged from existence forever. Before the eyes of the survivors, the unfortunate victims began to burn alive, their screams echoing in the hollow space. Horror and madness gripped the remaining participants as they watched the brutal final massacre. After the game concluded, the surviving members awoke in their own beds, the physical world feeling strange and quiet by comparison. The awakened Saren felt a rush of relief, savoring the simple comfort of her own room. Feeling grateful for surviving the third round, the jubilant beauty celebrated her new summoner class, which promised vast new possibilities. She immediately tested her new abilities, successfully manifesting a tiny, glowing fairy right in front of her. The adorable creature gracefully lowered itself onto her shoulder, forming an idyllic picture of a new magical bond. Saren realized with a start that it was the fairy's protective barrier that had allowed her to survive the dangerous ordeal. The surprised actress checked the regional rankings and was astonished to find herself in third place. Holding the glowing crystal reward, she pondered whether the mysterious Black Scythe had an interest in the same prize. Meanwhile, Yen Min awoke in a fit of rage, his hand instinctively grabbing his desk lamp. He smashed the object against the wall with all his strength, venting his fury at the humiliation of being forced to bow to another's will. The infuriated traitor seethed with hatred for Black Scythe, who had forced him to destroy his own reputation and betray his allies. Bitter regret gnawed at him as he thought of the relic he had ordered his friends to destroy. Suddenly a notification sound caught his attention, pulling his focus toward his phone. The tense man grabbed the device, expecting more trouble from his rapidly collapsing social circle. He realized the consequences of his actions in the virtual world were now bleeding into his reality. The grim traitor dialed a number and immediately pounced with accusations, shouting indignant questions at his former friend. His comrade abruptly cut him off, refusing to listen to excuses and blaming him for the catastrophic failure of the group. The desperate Yen Min tried to claim he had no choice, insisting that he would have been killed if he refused the Reaper. The adamant friend stated that he should have chosen death over the betrayal of his own comrades. A furious Kim shouted that he would have preferred a quiet grave for his friend over the stain of such cowardice. The traitor tried to highlight his high regional rank to prove his worth, but the ruthless buddy rejected every word. The conversation ended with a permanent severance of all ties, leaving the traitor isolated in his own room. Stunned, Yen Min realized he was truly alone, the though he still viewed himself as the victim of circumstances. He tried to reach out to other friends only to find that every single one of them had blocked his contact. A new wave of resentment washed over him, and he decided that these people were never worth his loyalty. The embittered man mentally threatened his former associates with violence, turning his failed friendships into pure, burning hatred. Elsewhere, the loyal department head in Sang-Chu reported to his boss, Maganlok, modestly attributing his survival to mere luck. The caring director expressed genuine concern for his subordinate's condition after such a grueling round. Maganlok inquired about the bodyguard's new level and class, listening intently to the report of a level 11 knight, and Sang-Chu informed the boss about Saren's unique summoner class, which allowed for the creation of protective shields. The impressed director saw immense value in this, noting the potential for his own hidden agendas. He ordered his bodyguard to cultivate a close relationship with the actress, viewing it as a strategic necessity. The cunning director suggested a romantic angle as the most efficient way to discover her weaknesses. The stunned bodyguard needed confirmation, struggling to process such an unexpected and cold-blooded order. Maganlok simply nodded, noting the unusual hesitation in his otherwise unflappable subordinate. The bodyguard expressed doubts about the plan, citing the actress's lack of reciprocal feelings. The boss moved on, inquiring about the urgent meeting the subordinate had requested regarding their search for the traitor, and Sang-Chu apologized for his failure to fulfill the task of tracking the man known as Yen Min. He explained that the sudden chaos of the third round had made it impossible to intercept the target. The principal listened carefully, expressing surprise at the news of Black Scythe's ability to defeat such a powerful divine opponent. The bodyguard confirmed the Reaper's incredible skill, emphasizing that the man operated with complete independence. Maganlok recognized that Ryu Min possessed characteristics that defied all conventional logic. Feeling a rare flicker of excitement, the director expressed a desire to meet this phenomenal player in person. He forgave his subordinate, recognizing the objective impossibility of the failed mission. The bodyguard reported that they had narrowed the search for the traitor down to 5 possible candidates. A detective warned that obtaining a definitive home address would take a full month of work. The director expressed his displeasure, finding a month's wait entirely unacceptable for a matter of such urgency. The judicious bodyguard began to propose an alternative approach to bypass the delay. The experienced machinator learned that his subordinate possessed 10,000 gold and suggested purchasing a general tracking skill once the total reached 20,000. An attentive on Sang-Chu recalled that his boss had made a massive purchase of company stock last month and urged him to pay closer attention to the details. The astonished entrepreneur asked which company was involved, and upon hearing the name Heavenly Demon Consulting, he felt a sudden sharp spike of interest. The worried boss inquired about the specific size of the acquisition, his pulse quickening as he awaited the confirmation of his suspicions. Hearing the staggering figure of 31%, he realized that the entire balance of power within his organization had shifted overnight. The shocked director struggled to comprehend that one individual had managed to acquire nearly a third of his company's shares through clandestine means. Showing genuine amazement, the bewildered entrepreneur mentally calculated the deal to be worth approximately 280 billion. He felt deeply puzzled about the source of such colossal funds, wondering if he faced an unknown billionaire or a rival with a hidden summoner. Analyzing the grim situation, Maganlok realized that a 31% owner held the legal right to participate in management and threaten his control. The calculating Ryu Min stared at his phone, pondering the necessity of waiting for the director's call while maintaining the image of a serious, detached investor. The excited younger brother suddenly burst into the room, impatiently inquiring about his sibling's level in the game while showing childlike enthusiasm. Disgruntled by the sudden intrusion, Ryu Min inquired about the cause of the disturbance, after hearing rumors of an arrogant boy bragging at his school. A frustrated Ryu Huan complained about the taunts, mentioning that a classmate with a level 11 class was using his power to humiliate the family. The soothing older brother assured the boy of his own superior level, though he inwardly recognized the impossibility of revealing the dangerous truth. The laconic Reaper mentioned level 12, intentionally understating his true figure to avoid drawing unnecessary attention from potential enemies. The curious boy, with eyes sparkling with hope, asked about his brother's class, desperate for information he could use to confront the bully. The evasive older brother refused to divulge any details, labeling the information a secret and turning away to effectively shut down the conversation. A determined Ryu Min chased the younger man out of the room under the pretense of fatigue, finally securing the space he needed for his machinations. The waiting strategist finally heard the long-awaited ringing of his phone, bracing himself for a conversation that would bring him closer to his ultimate goal. The assembled Reaper offered a polite hello, demonstrating professional business ethics and a willingness to engage in a constructive, calculated dialogue. The caller identified himself as Magan Lok, the director of Heavenly Dragon Consulting, confirming that the bait had been taken exactly as planned. The strategically minded Ryu Min decided to pretend to be naive, knowing that the image of a simpleton would make the director lower his guard. A concerned director offered a face-to-face meeting to his largest shareholder, eager to assess the new, influential player currently disrupting his field. The agreeing lad accepted the offer without hesitation, realizing there was no alternative way to advance his elaborate long-term plan. When discussing the day of the meeting, the Reaper suggested Friday, but the director mentally declined due to an important event involving inner-thinking powers. The diplomatic Ryu Min offered Saturday as an alternative, skillfully sidestepping the obstacle without revealing the true reasons for his refusal. Satisfied with the arrangement, the strategist was well aware of the predictability of the call and the director's underlying motivations. Knowing the history behind the consultancy's creation, the prudent Reaper realized the necessity of acquiring a new ability before sitting down with the headmaster. The coveted rune could be obtained in a multitude of ways, providing the experienced player with several distinct paths to achieve his singular objective. Some of these valuable artifacts were found in specific locations across various rounds, hidden from the eyes of casual, unobservant players. Other runes were distributed as special rewards for completing difficult quests or achieving rare statistical milestones within the game's infrastructure. The most powerful instances often dropped after the destruction of elite bosses, rewarding only those who possessed the strength to survive the encounter. In extremely rare cases, even killing common monsters could yield valuable runes, turning routine farming into a potentially life-altering treasure hunt. It was a little-known fact that some runes were available in the real world, creating a unique, dangerous connection between the virtual and physical dimensions. The conditions for the appearance of such real-life runes were incredibly complex, making them obtainable only by the most dedicated and knowledgeable players. A prepared Ryu Min arrived at the scene, fully aware of the imminent appearance of Jong Suk-hyun, a man with whom he had a special score to settle. The indomitable Reaper would never forget the name of this man, the criminal who had kidnapped his younger brother in a previous life. The vengeful boy clearly remembered the voice of his captor, who had demanded secret information that remained unavailable to others in the dangerous game. Remembering the past, Ryu Min recognized his former helplessness, yet he feigned total incomprehension to hide the depth of his true knowledge. The brutal bandit only laughed at his words, displaying absolute certainty in his own suspicions and the superiority of his current position. The kidnapper's shocking revelation that he knew about the Reaper's regression status served as the turning point that defined the nature of their conflict. Stunned by the criminal's insight, he later learned the source was a mind-reading rune that granted the wielder an incredible, unfair advantage. Since his 11th regression, the implacable Ryu Min had been obsessed with revenge, making the destruction of this man the centerpiece of his existence. The stubborn strategist had no priority other than retaliation against the monster who dared threaten his brother and expose his secret. The ambitious Reaper was also desperate to get his hands on the mind-reading rune before his enemy, realizing its immense value in the upcoming battle. The ruthless Jong Suk-hyun showed up at the warehouse grounds with a new victim on his shoulder, displaying the familiar pattern of a serial predator. A cold-blooded criminal dragged a helpless girl into the deserted warehouse to become the next object of his cruel and twisted entertainment. The cynical kidnapper warned the girl to remove the duct tape and forbade her from screaming, his eyes cold and devoid of empathy. Showing a complete disregard for human life, the frightened stranger begged for mercy, only to be met with a mocking denial from the bandit. The sadistic torturer listed the standard phrases of his victims, assuring her of the utter futility of any attempts to appease him or negotiate, The disoriented girl began apologizing, desperately trying to find the reason for her abduction in her past looks or random, innocent actions. A mocking Jong Suk-hyun remarked on the pointlessness of doing things that one would eventually have to apologize for later, showcasing his twisted logic. The bandit described his condition 2 days ago, walking down the street and looking for a potential victim to satisfy his base, violent desires. The swaggering criminal believed that one pathetic victim could fix all his problems, demonstrating a complete lack of morality or basic humanity. The man who objectified women noticed a beautiful girl on the street and decided to stalk her, ignoring everything but her physical figure. Following her around the corner and waiting for the opportune moment to attack, the purposeful hunter approached his chosen victim step by step. Upon reaching the girl, the insidious criminal activated his gaming powers, bringing the terrifying virtual abilities into the cold reality of the street. The blinded victim began screaming at the sudden loss of vision, becoming entirely helpless in the face of a dangerous opponent who abused his power. The panicked girl cried for help, while the perverted man relished the opportunity to do whatever he wanted with total, sickening impunity. The bandit reflected on his life, recognizing its former emptiness when he had been completely indifferent to whether he lived or died. Delighted with his new power, the criminal enjoyed the blinding light that dazzled his opponents, making his life take on new, violent colors. The degraded man saw his ability as the perfect tool for entertainment, wanting nothing more from his existence than the thrill of the hunt. The restless stalker visited a coffee shop where his attention was drawn to another attractive girl who became his next target. The fantasizing pervert anticipated applying the power of the glow to a new victim, mentally planning the details of his heinous, upcoming crime. The feignedly polite thug approached the girl and placed a simple order for an Americano on the rocks, masking his true, dark intentions. Striking up a conversation, the offender noted that the girl was new, introducing himself as a regular visitor to establish a sense of false credibility. A polite employee confirmed her novelty by mentioning the recent firing of many staff members, not realizing the danger she was in. The analytically minded bandit found the mass layoffs logical, assuming that people at risk of dying would not waste time on part-time jobs. The curious criminal inquired about the girl's status, learning that the 32-year-old woman was the owner of the shop and not a mere employee. Pleased by the victim's lack of gaming ability, the bandit took the age information as confirmation of her total defenselessness. The insolent stalker asked for a phone number, explicitly declaring his affection for the woman while displaying his characteristic arrogant self-confidence. The wary owner's face instantly changed, a reaction that did not escape the attentive gaze of the would-be criminal. The irritated man rudely inquired about the reason for this rejection, assuming his own unattractiveness was the sole factor for her distance. The infuriated bandit began aggressively accusing the girl of being disgusted by his facial blemishes, refusing the coffee and demanding his money back. The intimidated coffee shop owner, extremely frightened by the aggressive behavior, hurriedly handed the money back in a desperate effort to avoid conflict. Demonstrating his aggression, the criminal angrily snatched the money from the hands of the frightened girl, showing a complete lack of humanity. The man who left the shop accused the owner of arrogance because of her looks, constructing a twisted logic to justify his growing rage.